Chapter 314. In the blink of an eye, it was another Friday. After finishing her morning lessons, Shuyao had her lunch at the canteen. Glancing at the blinding sunlight outside the window, she decided to head back home when the sun set. Shortly after returning to her dormitory room, Shuyao received a message on her phone. It was from less than 111,111 inviting her to a game. Shuyao wasn't sleepy, so she didn't have the urge to take an afternoon nap. Considering that there were still a few more hours before she had to return home, she accepted Mr. Number's invitation, logged into the game, and entered the room he had shared with her. Juice and Expert weren't around. Shuyao had been asking them about it in the group chat, but they said that they were busy revising and preparing for their exams. So, after putting on her earphones, Shuyao casually asked, "Are Juice and Expert still busy revising?" Mr. Numbers replied with an before falling silent. Even though the two of them were spending more time playing than before, Mr. Numbers still didn't like to talk much. However, compared to the past when Mr. Numbers switched off his microphone was now on whenever he played with Shuyao. Even if the two of them weren't talking, Shuyao could still hear the occasional faint sounds coming from his side through the earphones. On the third round, a female voice suddenly spoke from Mr. Numbers' side, "The fruits are here." Mr. Numbers didn't respond. The female voice didn't respond either. Even though it was through the phone, Shuyao could still tell that the female voice belonged to a middle-aged man. It was only because of the word fruits that Shuyao asked, "Are you at home?" Less than 111,111 Shuyao, was the person who brought the fruits to you earlier your mother? Less than 111,111, no, it's the auntie at home. Shuyao replied with an "oh." 5 seconds later, she suddenly realized something and asked, "Are you from Beijing?" Less than 111,111 replied with an before replying with its "yes." While he was speaking, he even killed someone in the game. Shuyao replied casually, "What a coincidence. I'm from Beijing too, but my house is in the suburbs. What about you?" Less than 111,111 gave her a rough location. Shuyao was astonished. Mr. Number's house was actually in the same area as Lin Jie's. When it was around 5:00, Shuyao finally logged off, and Lin Jie stopped playing. He closed his eyes and rested for a while. Then, he found his computer and continued with his unfinished project. At around 7:00, a maid called him for dinner. He put down his laptop, and when he headed down the stairs, he sent a message to Shuyao, "Are you home yet?" Shuyao didn't respond to him. He didn't mind either. After dinner, Lin Jie took a stroll in the courtyard. When he returned, he took out his phone and sent Shuyao a WeChat message, "Are you done eating? Are you playing games?" Shuyao continued to ignore him. Bored, he watched the television for a while longer before whipping out his phone and sending Shuyao a WeChat message, "Call me when you're done with your work." There was still no reply from Shuyao. This time, Lin Jie didn't do anything else to pass the time. Instead, he logged into the game, only to see that Shuyao was actually online. Then, he sent a message to Shuyao in the game, "Pull me after this round." He didn't log out of the game. Instead, he waited until Shuyao's game was over before he took the initiative to form a party with her. After a long while, Shuyao finally agreed to his request. As he put on his earphones, he replied with a "hello." Right after he said those words, the microphone icon next to Shuyao's name lit up, and a male voice sounded in his ears, "Hello." Chapter 315. Right after he said those words, the microphone icon next to Shuyao's name lit up, and a male voice sounded in his ears, "Hello." As it was a single "hello," Lin Jie thought that it was a reply from him, so he asked once more, "Are you there?" I'm here, Yao loves ice cream," replied. The voice from the other end of the earpiece was still that of a man. Lin Jie abruptly froze in his tracks. This time, the voice from the other end of the earpiece was completely different from what he had said, so he didn't even have the chance to respond like before. His mind was completely blank, as if he had been struck dumb. On the other end of the game, after waiting for a long while without receiving a reply, Shi Yao's voice sounded once more. Hey hey hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? The clear voice of the man crashed into Lin Jie's eardrums. A moment later, Lin Jie's eyes slowly darted around, and before he knew what he was supposed to do, he had already spoken. Who are you? By the time he was done speaking, he realized that his tone was terrifyingly foreign. It was cold and filled with rage, and there was a slight tremble in his voice. The man who had logged into Shi Yao's account replied swiftly. Perhaps because he had sensed that Lin Jie's tone was unpleasant, his words were also very direct. And who are you? And who am I? I'll be the owner of the game I log into in the future, the closest person in the world. Lin Jie's eyes turned a little cold. Who I am isn't important. What's important is why are you logging into her account? Speaking up to this point, Lin Jie suddenly recalled how Shi Yao hadn't replied to any of his WeChat messages. This was something that had never happened before. Could she have lost her phone on her way home? With this thought in mind, Lin Jie spoke up once more. Did you pick up her phone? Name a price. How much are you willing to pay for your phone? The man, bro, is your brain alright? Which eye of yours saw that I picked up her phone? Let me tell you, I don't even need to pick up this phone. I can use it whenever I want. This was the first time Lin Jie had seen someone acting so righteously after picking up someone else's belongings. Lin Jie had never been on the losing end in a battle of words. There's no need for you to spout such arrogant words to me. You should save it for the police. You sure are funny. Putting aside the fact that I don't know the account owner, you're just an online friend in the game. You're an insignificant existence to the account owner. So why do you care so much about it? You're such a jokester, aren't you? An insignificant existence? Talking about him. You must be joking. How could he possibly be an insignificant existence to Soft Bun? Lin Jie was just about to retort back, but before he could say anything, the male voice sounded from the earpiece once more. Do you know who the account owner is? Do you know how old this account owner is? Do you know the phone number of the caller? Where do you live? You don't know any of this, do you? Chapter 316. I'm really not bragging, but in this world, if you ask the account owner who the man she cares about the most is, she'll definitely say it's me. Sure enough, there's no need to pay taxes on one's bragging. Lin Jie was just about to sneer coldly at the man with a hee-hee to signal him to continue bragging, but just like before, the man didn't even give him a chance to speak before he spoke once more. Compared to before, his voice was much louder this time around, and it was clear that his words weren't directed at Lin Jie. Yao, wash an apple for me. Even though it was quite a distance away, Lin Jie could still hear a female voice through the earpiece. All right. He was very familiar with that voice, and he could tell that it was Shi Yao's. A second ago, Lin Jie was still mocking the man for his boasting, but at this moment, he felt as if someone had smacked him in the head with a stick, causing him to freeze in place. Roughly a minute later, he heard the faint sound of footsteps through the earpiece, and the man's voice sounded, "Thank you, baby." Following which, Shi Yao's voice sounded, "You're welcome, baby." Following the crisp sound of the man chewing on the apple, Shi Yao spoke up once more. Supper is almost ready. Remember to come for it later. I'll be taking a bath first. Chewing on the apple, the man replied, Sure, sure. Mwah. Shi Yao didn't say anything else. A few seconds later, the man added, Be careful when you're taking a bath. Don't fall. Got it. Shi Yao said those 3 words before the sound of a door closing echoed in the room. The earpiece was silent for roughly 10 seconds before the man spoke again with a boastful tone. Do I have to say anything now? I don't care what you were thinking earlier to interfere in the account owner's business, but let me give you a piece of advice. You can play games with the account owner, but don't harbor any improper thoughts toward her. Because you can't remember. The man chattered on for a very long time before finally coming to a stop. Lin Jiej didn't say a word, but he didn't mind. When the sound of chewing on the apple finally stopped, the man said, Bro, can you prepare for the game? Since there was no response, the man urged once more, Bro? Bro? Do you want to play or not? After a long while, Lin Jiej finally came back to his senses. He didn't say anything and just logged out of the game. Baby. Soft Bun called that guy baby. Not only did she call him baby, she even washed apples for that boy. Not only did she wash apples, she even cooked supper. Cooking supper was one thing, but it was already so late. A man and a woman were alone in the same room, and she even went to take a shower. Her phone was such a private thing, yet she had given it to that boy and even allowed him to log into her game account. Awesome, awesome, truly awesome. The more Lin Jiej thought about it, the more flustered he became. Although he didn't know what he was panicking about. After an unknown amount of time, his phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, but he couldn't see who it was. It wasn't until he answered the call absent-mindedly and heard the person on the other end telling him the address and inviting him out to play that he finally realized that the caller was Liang Jusi. When he hung up the phone, he inadvertently glanced at the mirror in front of him. He was wearing a white t-shirt. His face was clean, and his clothes were neat and tidy. However, he felt as if his whole body was emitting a green light. Chapter 317. Lin Jiej stared at his reflection in the mirror for a very long time. It was only when his face was so green that it was almost as green as his face that he retracted his gaze and entered his changing room. He usually liked to wear white clothes, but there were quite a few clothes of other colors in his wardrobe. Most of these clothes were bought by his mother or sister, and most of them didn't even have their tags cut off. Under normal circumstances, Lin Jiej wouldn't pay attention to these clothes. However, while he was tidying up his hair, he caught a glimpse of a green t-shirt hanging in the wardrobe behind him through the mirror. Why would such a color appear in his room? Lin Jiej hesitated for 2 seconds before he walked over to the wardrobe and pulled down the green t-shirt. Following which, he saw a camouflage uniform next to it. There were light green, dark green, and even grayish green on it. Frowning, Lin Jiej pulled down that camouflage uniform as well. After which, he carefully searched around his changing room and took out all of the clothes that had a hint of green in them. Just as Lin Jiej was about to head out with the clothes in his arms, he suddenly thought for a moment before returning to the changing room. Amidst the pile of clothes, he found the greenest t-shirt and swapped it for the white t-shirt he was wearing. After which, he carried the clothes downstairs once more. As soon as Lin Jiej arrived at the living room, a maid came out from the kitchen with a platter of fruits in her hands. She was just about to bring it up to Lin Jiej's room. The moment the maid saw Lin Jiej, she subconsciously wanted to say, "Young master, have some fruits," but before she could say anything, she saw the green t-shirt Lin Jiej was wearing and the pile of clothes of different shades of green in his embrace. The maid was stunned for a full 10 seconds before she looked at Lin Jiej with a perplexed expression and asked, "Young master, what are you doing?" Without saying a word, Lin Jiej walked over to the entrance, opened the door, and tossed the clothes in his embrace outside. "Young master, those clothes are still fine. Why did you throw them away?" the maid asked anxiously. She placed the platter of fruits on the table by the side before walking out of the room to pick up the clothes. Lin Jiej opened the shoe cabinet, and when he was taking out his shoes, he saw a few pairs of shoes with a hint of green on them, so he took them out and tossed them outside as well. Even his favorite white shoes were thrown out without any hesitation because there was a little green on the back of them. As he threw them away, he said to the servant outside the door, "Find a place to deal with these things. In short, don't appear in my sight again." After saying those words, Lin Jiej checked the shoe cabinet to ensure that there was nothing wrong with his remaining shoes before putting them on. "Young master, it's already so late. Are you still going out?" Lin Jiej ignored the maid. "I've already cut the fruits for you. There are some imported apples from New Zealand that you said were delicious. Do you want to eat some before you go out?" Upon hearing the word apple, Lin Jiej abruptly halted his footsteps and asked, "Who told you to cut an apple for me? When did I say that apples taste better? I hate eating apples the most. Don't let me see apples at home in the future. Also, what's that green color on the mural? Throw it away." The servant turned pale with fright. "You can't do that, young master. Sir spent a lot of money to get it from the auction." Chapter 318. The maid had never seen such an unreasonable young master before, and she replied fearfully, "Those are the flowers that young miss ordered this morning." "Are those flowers? Aren't flowers supposed to be flowers? Why are there so many green leaves? Does this florist think that green leaves are cheap, so they're using them to scam their customers? Which florist ordered them from? I'm going to give them a bad review. Later on, remove all the green leaves in the vase. Just leave the flowers there." As Lin Jiej spoke, he pointed to other parts of the room and said, "Also, what kind of flower is that? It's so green that it hurts my eyes. I'll throw it away too." The maid replied, "That won't do, young master. That's a plant that old mister has been raising for many years. We can't throw it away. Since we can't throw it away, we'll just store it in the basement." Lin Jiej didn't care whether the plants could survive in the absence of sunlight or not. After helping the servant figure out a path for the plants, he pointed to a pair of earrings placed in a small box on the shoe cabinet at the entrance and asked, "What's this? Why is it so green?" As he spoke, Lin Jiej reached out to grab it. Fearing that he would throw it away, the maid hurriedly snatched the earrings away before he could. "Young master, you can't throw this away either. These are Madam's jade earrings, her dowry. They're from the Qing dynasty, and they're extremely expensive. If you throw them away, Madam will lecture you to death. She even changed my name to Green Jiej when she lectured me." Lin Jiej spat those words at the servant before turning around and walking away. On the way to the garage, he thought furiously, "Dowry. Things from the Qing dynasty are very expensive. Could it be a fake? Just look at that scary green color. Even if you offered him money, he wouldn't want it." Liang Jusi would invite Lin Jiej out to play almost every weekend. Over the past 2 weeks, Lin Jiej had been busy playing games with Shi Yao, so he rejected Liang Jusi without hesitation. Tonight, when he arrived at the place Liang Jusi mentioned, Liang Jusi was stunned to see him. "Brother Jia, you're finally doting on me." "Doting your head? Do I have such weird taste?" Lin Jiej shot a sidelong glance at Liang Jusi before walking over to the sofa and sitting down. The suite that Liang Jusi had booked was only lit up with a few colorful lights, so the lighting was extremely dim. As such, it was only when Lin Jiej walked up to Liang Jusi that Liang Jusi realized that Lin Jiej was wearing a green t-shirt. His eyes widened in astonishment once more as he exclaimed, "Brother Jia, you've been a hermit for quite some time recently. Did your sense of beauty really change so much?" This time, Lin Jiej didn't even spare Liang Jusi a glance as he picked up a cocktail on the table. Just as he was about to open his mouth to drink, he realized that the cocktail was light green. There was a slice of green lemon on the side of the bottle and a green mint leaf floating on top of the wine. Lin Jie abruptly shut his mouth and tossed the cocktail back onto the table. Why aren't you drinking? This is their new cocktail. It's very delicious, Liang Jusi asked in confusion. If you want to drink, drink it yourself. Lin Jie glanced at the table in front of him and saw a green wine bottle, a green wine glass, green grapes, and an apple. The apple was clearly freshly washed, and there were still water droplets on it. So, was this the scene when Soft Bun washed the apple for that man earlier? Chapter 319. Why? Did green offend you? If you're unhappy, why don't you sing a song? Why don't I pick your favorite song, Green Light? Liang Jusi hummed as he spoke, looking forward to a stroke of luck and an impact. What a miraculous encounter. Past the mountain peak and the layers of clouds, where's the green light? After picking the song, Liang Jusi found a microphone and passed it over to Lin Jie. Like an electric shock, like a miracle, streaking across my life, unlike any other, you're the green light. It was only after he finished humming the lyrics that he realized something was amiss with the atmosphere. Liang Jusi paused for a second before slowly raising his gaze to look at Lin Jie's face. The young man was staring straight at him. Perhaps it was due to the green t-shirt he was wearing, but there was a hint of green in the depths of his eyes. A shudder ran down Liang Jusi's spine. In the next second, he retracted the microphone and shouted, "Retreat! Retreat immediately! Everything that's green has to be taken away." Soon, Liang Jusi called a waiter over. Soon, everything in the room that had anything to do with green was removed. The waiter followed Liang Jusi's instructions, and after everything was done, he asked politely, "Is there anything else I can do for you?" Liang Jusi was just about to say no when Lin Jie spoke up, "Take away the apples too." The waiter was stunned. Liang Jusi was taken aback as well, but he quickly recovered and shouted, "Yes, yes, yes." After the waiter left with a huge plate of apples, Liang Jusi walked up to Lin Jie and asked with a cheeky smile, "Brother Jia, is everything fine now?" Lin Jie nodded silently, but his complexion seemed to have improved significantly. Liang Jusi had a lot of friends, so the suite was bustling with noise and excitement. However, Lin Jie seemed to be sitting alone on the sofa, not drinking, talking, or singing, as if he wasn't part of the group. Everyone could tell that Lin Jie was behaving strangely, so they automatically avoided the 2-meter radius around him. Lin Jie had no idea how long he sat alone in the bustling environment, but when he turned his attention back to the suite, he saw a young lady eating dumplings. Dumplings? Glancing at the takeaway box in front of the young lady, Zhang Xian's eyes flickered as he suddenly recalled the time when Shuyao ate 3 huge bowls of wontons at the breakfast stall near her school. He could still vividly remember watching Soft Bun eating back then. The sight of her eating had been very pleasing to the eye, and it had left him in a good mood. But this girl, Lin Jie stared at the young lady who was eating wontons while looking at her phone for a moment, and he realized that he didn't feel the same way he did when he saw Soft Bun eating wontons. It couldn't be that he only had feelings for Soft Bun, could it? Lin Jie pondered for a moment before turning to the dumpling-eating female student and saying, "I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you not look at your phone and focus on eating your dumplings?" The young lady was taken aback by Lin Jie's suggestion, but she didn't turn him down. Nodding her head, she put away her phone and focused on eating her dumplings. Lin Jie stared at the young lady for less than 3 seconds before shaking his head. It still didn't give him the same feeling as when Soft Bun was eating wontons, or was the scene not right? Lin Jie lowered his gaze and pondered for a moment before asking, "Is there any female student here who's willing to help me out?" Chapter 320. Lin Jie wasn't in a hurry to reply. Instead, he scanned the ladies in the room one by one before his eyes finally stopped on the most beautiful lady. This lady was quite good-looking, just that she wasn't as pretty as Soft Bun. But there was no helping it. She was the most beautiful lady he could find, so he had to make do with her. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej asked politely, "Are you all right with it?" The girl nodded and looked very happy. "Sure." Lin Jiej nodded as he thought back to the time when Shi Yao was taking her examination. He had stood before the window and looked into Shi Yao's eyes, and after that, he had briefly explained his request to the young lady. Even though the lady had no idea what Lin Jiej was up to, she still followed his instructions. Lin Jiej and the lady stared at one another quietly. Following his instructions, the lady winked at him from time to time. 30 seconds passed. Lin Jiej realized that his heart was as calm as still water, and he didn't feel anything at all. A minute passed. Lin Jiej didn't feel like the lady was flirting at all. A minute and 30 seconds passed. Not only did Lin Jiej not feel seduced at all, he even felt a little tired of this lady's beauty. In less than 2 minutes, Lin Jiej finally gave up. He asked once more, "Can I trouble you to help me eat another apple?" The girl nodded her head in confusion. Lin Jiej shot a glance at the equally confused Liang Jusi and said, "Help me get the waiter to bring an apple over." Lin Jiej paused for a moment before adding, "The bigger the apple, the better." Soon, the apple was brought over. Lin Jiej gestured for the lady to focus on eating the apple. After the lady nodded, Lin Jiej stared at her intently. That young lady was really eating the apple earnestly, but Lin Jiej couldn't find the urge to snap a photo of Soft Bun eating an apple back in his grandfather's ward and preserve it forever. Could it be that the light wasn't bright enough? After all, the sun was really bright that day. After a moment of contemplation, Lin Jiej called for the waiter to switch on the lights in the room. He stared at the lady for a while longer, but it was to no avail. Lin Jiej frowned. He pondered for a moment longer before asking the lady once more, "One last favor. Can you act as though you've been wronged?" The girl thought and revealed an expression. "Like this." Lin Jiej thought back to the time when 2 girls were bad-mouthing Shi Yao at the Golden Resplendence, and he recalled her reaction when she overheard it. Thus, he described it to the 2 girls in detail: "Lower your head a little and purse your lips a little more." Yes, that's it. Lin Jiej stared at her face for a minute, but he still couldn't find the heartache he felt when Shi Yao revealed such an expression back then. Could it be that the girl's makeup was too thick? Shi Yao had always been barefaced, so it affected him. Lin Jiej pondered for a moment before suggesting, "Can you remove your makeup?" A conflicted look surfaced on the young lady's face, but perhaps because it was Lin Jiej's suggestion, she reluctantly nodded her head in agreement. The young lady was indeed quite beautiful. After removing her makeup, she seemed a little young, and Lin Jiej found her even more pleasing to the eye. But despite the aggrieved look on her face, Lin Jiej still couldn't find the heartache he felt for her. Liang Jusi finally couldn't take it anymore and asked, "Brother Jia, what are you up to?" As if he hadn't heard Liang Jusi's words, Lin Jiej continued staring fixedly at the young lady who was removing her makeup, and as he stared at her, 2 words came out of his mouth: "It's over." Chapter 321. As if he hadn't heard Liang Jusi's words, Lin Jiej continued to stare fixedly at the young lady who was removing her makeup, and as he stared at her, 2 words came out of his mouth: "It's over." What? Liang Jusi couldn't understand what Lin Jiej meant at all. What's over? Lin Jiej was too immersed in his thoughts to respond to Liang Jusi. Retracting his gaze from the young lady, he took out his phone, tapped into his photo album, and found the photo he had taken of Shi Yao munching on an apple. With just a glance, he realized that his heart, which had been as calm as stagnant water, had begun beating once more. He had been staring at that young lady for so long, but the feeling that he couldn't find was easily found in this still photo. Lin Jiej raised his hand to touch his chest, and after feeling the beating of his heart, he muttered once more, "It's over, it's over, it's really over. Brother Jia, what are you saying? I don't understand at all. What do you mean by it's over? Also, what are you looking at?" As Liang Jusi spoke, he moved closer to Lin Jiej's phone screen. Before he could look at Lin Jiej's phone screen, Lin Jiej had already locked his phone. Ignoring Liang Jusi, Lin Jiej continued on his train of thought, "I've been poisoned, I've really been poisoned, poisoned." Liang Jusi's voice rose by several decibels. "What kind of poison? But I can see that your complexion is not bad. Soft bun." Lin Jiej muttered those two words softly. His voice was a little soft, so Liang Jusi couldn't hear it clearly. All he heard was the last two words, bun. "What bun? You want to eat bun? What kind of filling? I can buy it for you right now." Before Liang Jusi could finish his rambling, Lin Jiej's lips moved once more. "Song Chaoshi is right, she's right, and the rest of you are right too." Song Chaoshi said that the most direct manifestation of liking someone was the desire to sleep with them. Soft Bun said that his various actions were indicative of liking someone. Back then, he thought that since they said that he liked someone, he should just take it as that. It wasn't until tonight that he realized that they were right. He liked her, the kind of genuine, heartfelt love. He liked Soft Bun. Even though he didn't know when this feeling had started, and even though he didn't know when it started, he had fallen in love with her. Although he found out about this feeling a little late, it was real. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej added, "I've really been poisoned by Soft Bun." "What? Was he poisoned by steamed bun? Is it because it's too hot in the summer and the stuffing is spoiled? Did you get food poisoning? You still have to go to the hospital for a checkup." Liang Jusi started nagging again. Finally snapping out of his thoughts, Lin Jiej heard the latter half of Liang Jusi's long-winded words, and with a slight frown on his forehead, he tossed out an "I'll be leaving first" before taking his leave, ignoring Liang Jusi's questions and persuasion. He walked over to the roadside and got into the car. After sitting in the car for a moment, he stepped on the accelerator and aimlessly drove around Beijing. Chapter 322. Lin Jiej drove all the way to Shi Yao's house before he finally stepped on the brakes. After turning off the engine, Lin Jiej got out of the car and glanced at Shi Yao's house. Except for one room, which had a faint light, the other rooms were all pitch black. So, Soft Bun was already asleep. Had that boy already left her house? He admitted that he didn't know much about Soft Bun, but he knew that she was an only child, so she didn't have any older or younger brothers. So, who was that man? Who was he to her? From their conversation, he could tell that there was something amiss between the two of them. Could it be that Soft Bun and that man? For some reason, Lin Jiej, who didn't dare to think any further, suddenly recalled the first message Shi Yao had sent him. "Lin Jiej, it's Shi Yao. The reason why I'm looking for you is to tell you that we should cancel our engagement." Annulment of the engagement. That's right. How could he have forgotten? Ever since he found out about her existence 6 years ago until now, she had never looked for him. The first time she had looked for him was to annul the engagement. He did wonder why she, who had never thought of rejecting this marriage in the past 6 years, would suddenly want to cancel their engagement. But he had never looked into the matter, so, could it be that the reason why she wanted to cancel their engagement was because of that man? With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej suddenly realized how frighteningly anxious he was. Did Soft Bun really have someone she liked? If Soft Bun really did have someone she liked, what should he do? Could he be like Xie Shangzhou, only to have the flames of love extinguished as soon as he realized that he had fallen in love? If it was really as he had guessed, that Soft Bun really had someone she liked, and she wanted to cancel their engagement for him, what would he do? Would he selfishly keep her for the sake of his love? A grim expression appeared on Lin Jiej's face. Even though it was just a conjecture, he couldn't help but seriously consider this question. Time slowly trickled by. The night grew darker and darker, and when the surroundings were so quiet that only the chirping of insects could be heard, Lin Jiej finally grasped the answer in his heart. If what he guessed was true, if she really had someone she liked, if she really wanted to break off the engagement with him for the person she liked, then he was willing to back out, willing to use the happiness he wanted to give her happiness. This was bad, this was really bad. It seemed like he liked her more than he had imagined. Otherwise, why would he always put himself in her shoes and think about her happiness? He had really fallen into her hands, and he had fallen very, very deeply. It wasn't as simple as just being poisoned by soft bun. Rather, the poison had already seeped into his bones, and there was no cure for it. Lin Jiej didn't leave Shi Yao's place for the entire night. At 8:00 the next morning, Shi Yao walked out of the building. Lin Jiej's first thought was to hide. Just as he was contemplating whether he should drive away or lay down in the car, he suddenly recalled how he had secretly taken out her purse and tossed it under the passenger seat so that she wouldn't pay the bill. It had been a while. Although the car was washed every day, if it wasn't maintained, it wouldn't be discovered under normal circumstances. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiej cautiously looked down at the passenger seat. Chapter 323. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej tried to peer beneath the passenger seat. Then, he realized that her purse was really still there. Even the heavens are helping me. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej took out Shi Yao's purse. Now that he had a shield, he unscrupulously pressed the horn. The ear-piercing sound of the horn attracted the gazes of those who had woken up early in the morning. Of course, this included Shi Yao as well. As she was the closest to Lin Jiej's car, the sound of the horn was also the most piercing to her ears. As such, when she turned her head around, her face was filled with displeasure. However, when she saw Lin Jiej's face through the windshield, she couldn't help but be taken aback for a moment. Then, she began making her way over to Lin Jiej's car. When Shi Yao was about to reach his car, Lin Jiej pushed open the car door and got out with Shi Yao's purse. When Shi Yao saw Lin Jiej getting out of the car, she subconsciously wanted to ask why he was here, but before her words could reach her throat, she saw the t-shirt he was wearing. It was actually green, and it was a bright green at that. Shi Yao's footsteps came to an abrupt halt. She even forgot about the question she wanted to ask Lin Jiej. When Lin Jiej saw Shi Yao, his first thought was to say that he had her purse with him. But before he could say anything, he realized that Shi Yao was looking at him with a bizarre expression. Why is she looking at me like that? Is there something wrong with me? With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej lowered his head to look at where Shi Yao was looking at him. When he came into contact with his glowing green t-shirt, he immediately understood why Shi Yao would have such a reaction. Lin Jiej didn't say anything. A moment later, when he saw that Shi Yao was still staring at his t-shirt, he asked, "Is there something wrong with my shirt?" Hearing Lin Jiej's question, Shi Yao hurriedly shifted her gaze from Lin Jiej's clothes to his face. Perplexed, she replied politely, It's not strange at all. Why are you still staring at it?" Lin Jiej didn't expose Shi Yao. Instead, he replied with an "oh" before asking, "Then, what do you think of the color of my t-shirt?" She really wanted to say that it wasn't much, but Shi Yao suppressed her emotions and replied calmly, It's pretty green." Green. Lin Jiej recalled the stifled feelings he had for the entire night, and his tone became a little gloomy. "Do you think this color looks good?" Green wasn't a problem, but this t-shirt. It was really hard to describe. However, Shi Yao still didn't dare to speak the truth because she noticed that there was something wrong with Lin Jiej's gaze and tone. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination, but for an instant, she felt that his gaze was a little sorrowful. Shi Yao's heart skipped a beat in fright at her own misconception. Then, with a smile on her face, she said her first sincere words to Lin Jiej that day. The color is pretty bright. I know. Green, the kind that gives off light. Lin Jiej spoke up once more, and this time, his voice was a little deeper than before. What should I do? She felt that Lin Jiej was sorrowful once more, and it was even more sorrowful than before. Just as Shi Yao was at a loss as to how she should reply to Lin Jiej, someone suddenly called out to her, "Baby Yao Yao." Chapter 324. Just as Shi Yao was at a loss as to how she should respond to Lin Jiej's words, someone suddenly called out her name, "Baby Yao Yao, Yao Yao, Baby Yao Yao." That tone, that voice, it's clearly the man from last night. Reflexively, Lin Jiej abruptly turned his head toward the source of the voice. A man dressed in a black short-sleeved shirt had just walked out of Shi Yao's building and was currently walking toward her. In the instant that voice sounded, Shi Yao instinctively turned her head around as well. She wanted to respond to the person who called out to her, but before she could open her mouth, she felt a chill at the back of her head. Shi Yao subconsciously shot a glance at Lin Jiej behind her, but other than staring fixedly at the area in front of her, he didn't seem to be behaving abnormally. This is really weird. Why would I suddenly have such a feeling? With such thoughts in mind, Shi Yao raised her hand and scratched the back of her head. In the short 10 seconds that Shi Yao had turned around to look at Lin Jiej, the man had already walked up to her back. At the same time, in this short span of 10 seconds, Lin Jiej had already discreetly assessed the young man from head to toe, and he made a clear comparison between himself and the young man. The man's looks aren't bad, but compared to me, his eyes are a little smaller, his nose bridge is a little shorter, his mouth is a little bigger, his facial features are a little less defined, and even his skin isn't as fair and smooth as mine. His height isn't too bad either, but compared to me, he's still a little short. Even his body proportions are a little lacking. On top of that, he's wearing a pair of shorts, causing his leg hair to be a little too lush. His hairstyle isn't good enough, and his clothes aren't up to standard either. For a man like him to actually wear earrings. And those hands of his fingers aren't long enough. While Lin Jiej was racking his brains to compare himself to the man noticed that Shi Yao was ignoring him after he called out to her, so he called out once more, "Baby Yao Yao." As he spoke, he even reached out his hand and lightly flicked Shi Yao's head. Does this man even have the most basic upbringing? If you want to talk, you should just talk nicely. Why are you getting physical in broad daylight? As if glued in, Lin Jiej's eyes were glued to the finger that had just flicked Shi Yao's head. On the other hand, Shi Yao wasn't displeased by the young man's actions. Instead, she pouted her lips innocently before turning to glare at the young man. Haven't I told you many times not to hit my head for no good reason? That's right, she doesn't even want you to touch her. Lin Jiej stared fixedly at the young man's fingers as he criticized him in his mind. Just as he was cursing in his heart, he had a mental breakdown. Didn't I tell you many times? In other words, this boy had flicked her head many times. The boy grinned and replied, "Who asked you to be so short?" Shi Yao didn't seem to mind those words at all. "Why did you come down?" They started chatting just like that. As if he didn't exist. Lin Jiej's gaze was fixed on the young man's finger, and he feigned a sore throat as he cleared his throat. The boy, "I'm afraid that you'll be lonely and cold, so I thought about it and decided to accompany you for breakfast." "Shi Yao, I'll have to thank you then." Chapter 325. Who's going to follow you? Also, didn't she hear the sound I made earlier? Lin Jie waited for a few seconds, but seeing that Shi Yao was still ignoring him, he cleared his throat once more. This time, his voice was much heavier than before. Male student, right, baby Yao, what are we eating? Shi Yao's eyes lit up. I haven't thought about it yet. I want to eat wontons, youtiao, and Grandpa Wang's buns. Male student, baby Yao, why don't we buy some youtiao and have some wontons at the wonton restaurant? After that, we'll take some of Grandpa Wang's buns home for lunch. Shi Yao seemed to be very satisfied with this arrangement, and her eyes curved into crescents as she replied, sure, sure. Staring at Shi Yao's smiling face, Lin Jie coughed twice heavily. Can soft buns threshold for humor be that low? Also, this male student is clearly using a cheat. How can he suddenly mention food to soft bun? The male student replied gleefully, how is it? Baby Yao, after listening to my arrangements, do you think that I'm very smart? Shi Yao nodded. Why yes, you call this smart. Do you have some kind of misunderstanding about the word smart? But before Shi Yao could finish her words, Lin Jie, who had been ignored for quite a while, didn't give her the chance to speak. With a stifled groan, he bent over and placed one hand on his abdomen while using the other to support the front of the car. Fearing that Shi Yao would continue to ignore him, Lin Jie intentionally bumped into Shi Yao's shoulder as he bent over. Shi Yao turned her head around in bewilderment, and upon seeing Lin Jie's expression, a frown suddenly appeared on her forehead. With a concerned look, she asked, what's wrong? Facing Shi Yao's concern, Lin Jie waved his hands casually, seemingly trying his best to hold back something as he replied, it's nothing. After replying, Lin Jie sneaked a glance at the male student. Do you think that you're the only one who knows how to use a cheat to steal the show? Who doesn't know how to do it? From this moment onward, I'll show you what it means to have the acting skills of an Oscar winner. With this thought in mind, Lin Jie made the pained expression on his face even more apparent. In order to make it seem more realistic, he even shuddered a little. Seeing his reaction, Shi Yao became even more nervous. You call this nothing? Where do you feel uncomfortable? Shi Yao asked as she assessed Lin Jie. Seeing that he was clutching his abdomen, she asked, is your stomach feeling uncomfortable? Lin Jie looked as if he was in so much pain that he couldn't speak at all. He held his breath and nodded his head slightly. A moment later, he finally said softly, I was a little busy recently, so I didn't eat properly. As a result, my stomach ailments acted up. Actually, I felt better yesterday. Then, I made an appointment with my friends to come to the suburbs for a vacation. After watching the sunrise in the morning, when I was driving back to the resort to have breakfast, I found your wallet in the car. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to find it and would be worried. Thinking that the resort is close to your house, I quickly drove over to send it to you. Did you see that, kid? That's what true intelligence is. Not only would he be able to win Soft Bun's concern, but he would also be able to win Soft Bun's heartache as well. After all, he had endured the pain of his illness and delivered it to her as soon as he found out that she had lost her purse. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jie suddenly sucked in a deep breath of cold air, as if he couldn't bear the pain any longer. Then, he continued. It's probably because I didn't have a good dinner last night, and I haven't had breakfast yet either. My stomach is acting up again. Chapter 326. Looking at the wallet that she had been searching for days to no avail, Shi Yao became even more worried for Lin Jie. Do you need me to accompany you to the hospital? There's no need for that. Lin Jie waved his hands casually. Then, as if in excruciating pain, he tugged on his bright green t-shirt so hard that it deformed. I'll be fine after I return to the hotel and take some medicine. I've already delivered the wallet to you. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. After saying those words, Lin Jiej reached out to open the car door, but he was unable to do so no matter how hard he tried. He was unable to open the car door. I'm already in so much pain that I can't even open the car door, so how am I supposed to drive? Shuyao pondered for a moment before raising her head to look at the floor where her apartment was located. Then, without any hesitation, she made up her mind and said, "Why don't you head over to my place and rest for a while? I'll get you some stomach medicine so that you can leave after the pain has subsided, alright? Lad, do you think that you're the only one who's been to Yao Yao's place? And now, I can do it too." Having fulfilled his wish, Lin Jiej couldn't wait to fly over to Yao's place. Yet, he still replied with a gentlemanly tone, "Is it convenient?" "Of course it's convenient," Yao replied. Then, she asked, "Can you walk by yourself? Do you need me to lend you a hand?" Lin Jiej didn't turn her down. He replied with a "thank you" before allowing Yao to hold his arm and help him into the building. In order to not expose himself, Lin Jiej intentionally slowed down his footsteps. Yao's apartment wasn't too big, roughly around 100 square meters in size. However, it was decorated warmly. Her parents weren't home, so Yao took a look at Lin Jiej's condition after entering the apartment. After a moment of hesitation, she brought him to her bedroom and said, "Can you rest on my bed for a while?" Soft Bun's bedroom, and the bed that Soft Bun is sleeping on. Suppressing the joy in his heart, Lin Jiej weakly nodded his head and replied with a polite but restrained "thank you." After helping Lin Jiej to his seat, Yao went to look for the medicine box and fed him some stomach medicine. Lin Jiej, who didn't feel any stomachache at all, didn't even blink as he swallowed the medicine that Yao fed him. After taking the medicine, Yao poured a cup of warm water for Lin Jiej and said, "Your stomach is hurting so much, so it's best if you don't eat anything outside. Can I cook some porridge for you?" Lin Jiej nodded and said reservedly, "I'll be troubling you then. You should rest first then." Yao was still a little worried, so before heading to the kitchen, she instructed the young man, "Go and take a look at him. If anything happens, you'll be able to help him." The young man didn't reject Yao's request. He really entered Yao's bedroom, sat down on the chair, and casually picked up a comic book to accompany Lin Jiej. Roughly 2 minutes later, Lin Jiej's eyes darted around as he asked, "Can you help me up? I need to go to the washroom." The man put down the comic and walked over to the bed. He was just about to reach out to help Lin Jiej up when Lin Jiej suddenly fell to the floor. Didn't he have a close relationship with Soft Bun? Didn't he say that he was the person that Soft Bun cared about the most in the world? Very well then, I'll accuse him of intentionally failing to catch him and causing him to fall to the ground. Lin Jiej, who had already planned everything out, really wanted to cry out in pain in order to attract Yao's attention. But before he could make a sound, the bedroom door suddenly opened, and Yao walked in wearing an apron. "Right, Lin Jiej. I forgot to introduce him to you. He's my younger brother." Chapter 327. Younger brother. As those two words echoed in his ears, Lin Jiej felt as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water over his head. His body stiffened, and with an incredulous look on his face, he exclaimed in astonishment, "Younger brother?" The man who had left him feeling stifled for an entire night and whom he was currently vying for was Soft Bun's younger brother. In other words, he was his brother-in-law in name. Soft Bun's younger brother was no different from his own younger brother. Someone whom he had to fawn over, not someone whom he had to scheme against. Wait a minute, isn't Soft Bun an only child? How could she have a younger brother? Could he be an illegitimate child that her father or mother secretly gave birth to outside? Pooey, just how am I thinking of my father-in-law and mother-in-law? Lin Jiej hurriedly tossed these random thoughts out of his head. He was just about to ask Shi Yao where her younger brother came from when Shi Yao, who had heard his astonished tone, suddenly spoke up, "That's right. To be more precise, he's my younger cousin, the son of my aunt, who is also my father's elder sister. He's the same age as me, but he's 5 months younger than me. Due to his birthday being too late, he wasn't able to attend primary school together with me, so he's currently in his 3rd year of high school, and he'll be taking his college entrance examination next month. So, he wasn't an illegitimate child but his younger cousin. In other words, he was his younger cousin, and his younger cousin's brother-in-law. But a younger cousin was still a younger brother, and a younger cousin was still a younger cousin. He wasn't someone whom he could easily scheme against. While Lin Jiej was still trying to wrap his head around the matter, Shi Yao suddenly realized that Lin Jiej was lying on the floor. With a frown on her forehead, she asked, "Lin Jiej, why are you on the floor?" Hearing those words, Lin Jiej replied without any hesitation, "Oh, I had a stomachache, so I wanted to go to the washroom. I lost my balance and fell down. It has nothing to do with my younger brother." Shi Yao and her cousin turned to look at Lin Jiej. "Cousin. He fell down. Why did you drag him down?" "Shi Yao." She was just asking out of concern. Why did he mention her younger brother? Lin Jiej was stunned for 2 seconds before he realized that he had been too nervous, that he had nearly exposed his thoughts. Thus, he quickly explained, "I'm just worried that you might misunderstand." "Oh, is that so?" Shi Yao walked over to Lin Jiej and helped him up. At the same time, she suddenly recalled something and said, "I almost forgot, I haven't finished introducing him yet. His name is Nanchang, Gu Nanchang. He's the Nanchang who refused to turn back even after crashing into a wall." Gu Nanchang, who had been quiet all this while, protested unhappily, "Baby Yao, I've told you many times, don't use this line when you introduce me." Completely unfazed by Gu Nanchang's displeasure, Shi Yao turned to him and said, "He's Lin Jiej. I believe I don't need to introduce him to you." Seeing that Gu Nanchang wasn't saying a word, Shi Yao spoke up once more, "Hurry up and greet him." Like a puppy, Gu Nanchang obediently replied with an "oh" before turning to Lin Jiej and greeting him, "Nice to meet you, brother-in-law." This time, it was Shi Yao's turn to panic. Seemingly embarrassed by Gu Nanchang calling her brother-in-law, her face reddened slightly as she protested, "Gu Nanchang, what nonsense are you talking about?" After saying those words, Shi Yao turned to Lin Jiej, wanting to tell him not to mind it. Chapter 328. Gu Nanchang, thank you, brother-in-law. Calling him brother-in-law twice in a row left Lin Jiej overjoyed. He felt as if he was floating on air, such that he, who had never praised anyone in his entire life, didn't even realize that he was speaking so sweetly at this moment. "Little bro, you're quite handsome. You have big eyes, thick eyebrows, good facial features, a tall stature, and a good figure. Even your dressing style is very tasteful." Shi Yao's gaze toward Lin Jiej turned even more bizarre. Why is he so weird? He's completely different from how he usually is. She actually saw a hint of bootlicker in him. Is he the weird one, or is she the weird one? Why do I keep getting these inexplicable and frightening feelings from him today? Meeting Shi Yao's gaze, Lin Jiej blinked his eyes. Could it be that Soft Bun is unhappy that I keep praising my younger brother? With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej added, "Yao Yao, as expected of your younger brother. Ah. That bootlicker is getting heavier. Perhaps it's not my problem. Maybe his stomach pain has affected his head instead." Considering that Lin Jiej was a patient, Shi Yao didn't probe any further. "I'm still cooking porridge in the kitchen, so I'll have to look after it. If you're feeling unwell, you can call Nanchang for help." Saying so, Shi Yao turned to Gu Nanchang and instructed, And you, stop playing with your phone and reading comics all day. You're going to have an examination next month, so you should finish the paper that Auntie told you to do today, alright? Got it. Gu Nanxiang replied reluctantly, seemingly annoyed by Shi Yao's request. Nevertheless, he still sat down at the table and took out his paper. Shi Yao left the bedroom without saying a word. Lin Jiej didn't head to the bathroom either. Instead, he lay on Shi Yao's bed and looked around to pass the time. Soft Bun sure was a glutton. The bed sheets were covered in strawberries, even the hooks on the walls were in the shape of ice cream, and the pillow was actually a corn. The carpet beneath the study table was covered in candy patterns. Her younger brother's leg hair sure is a little lush, but this only goes to show that he's manly. Soft Bun's bedsheet sure smells good. It smells just like her, sweet and soft. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiej couldn't help but close his eyes and take a deep breath. After which, he buried his head into Shi Yao's pillow and chuckled inwardly. If only I could lie on Soft Bun's bed and never leave, how great would that be? Lin Jiej hadn't slept a wink the previous night, and as he pondered over the matter, drowsiness overcame him, and he really fell asleep. When Lin Jiej opened his eyes once more, it was already noon. There was no one else in Shi Yao's bedroom other than him, and there was a small blanket wrapped around his body. Did Soft Bun put it on him? Lin Jiej suddenly felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He pulled off the blanket, got off the bed, and walked out of the bedroom. Shi Yao and Gu Nanxiang sat at the dining table. Shi Yao spoke softly to the examination papers on the table. For some reason, Lin Jiej found the sight before him to be very warm and beautiful. He stared at it for a moment before making his way over. Only when he got closer did he realize that Shi Yao was explaining the English paper to Gu Nanxiang. Gu Nanxiang was the first to notice that someone was approaching. He turned his head around to look at Lin Jiej. Chapter 329. Upon seeing Lin Jiej, Shi Yao's reprimanding Gu Nanxiang stopped abruptly, and even her tone became much gentler. You're awake. Lin Jiej replied with an I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention and accidentally fell asleep. It's fine. Shi Yao smiled lightly. Is your stomach still hurting? Lin Jiej nodded silently. Shi Yao poked Gu Nanxiang's head with her pen, indicating for him to pay attention. Gu Nanxiang raised his hand indignantly and rubbed his head, but he still turned his gaze back to the paper. After she was done, Shi Yao turned her head around, and her gaze met with Lin Jiej's. Shi Yao's fingers trembled slightly as she held on to her pen. She finally said what she wanted to say. Why don't we go out for lunch? My parents went out with a tour group 2 days ago, so there's nothing to eat at home. Without any hesitation, Lin Jiej replied with a sure. They had lunch near Shi Yao's house. Lin Jiej couldn't possibly just sit around, so he tried to find a topic to talk about after sitting down. Considering that Gu Nanxiang had been working so hard on his papers over the weekend, it was likely that his results were pretty good. Thus, he found a topic that he could praise later on and asked, given how diligent my younger brother is, his results must be really good, right? In this month's mock exam, he scored a 0 out of 750. Without giving Gu Nanxiang a chance to speak, Shi Yao continued, It's precisely because I had to keep an eye on him that I went home. I didn't find the right topic. Lin Jiej pondered for 2 seconds before replying, It's fine, it's just a mock exam. It doesn't mean anything. Shi Yao, he scored a 0 in the previous mock exam too, the one before that, and the one before that too. My aunt was furious. She said that even if he doesn't know anything, he should at least try his luck and stop handing in blank papers. Do you know how he replied to her? He said that he couldn't, that he was afraid that he would change history by answering the questions. He even said that he was a transmigrator from the future, and that he was only following the course of history. He. It wasn't that he didn't find the right topic, but that he had nearly failed in his flattery. Not wanting to offend his cousin's brother-in-law, Lin Jiej tried his best to salvage the situation. It's just academic performance. It doesn't mean anything, and it can't define a person's life. I can't say for sure, but that shouldn't be an excuse to not study hard. Shi Yao replied disapprovingly. Damn it, I was so focused on coaxing my brother-in-law that I forgot about soft bun. Lin Jiej hurriedly nodded his head. That's right. As a student, learning is still our main priority. As he said those words, Lin Jiej discreetly observed Shi Yao's expression, and he noticed that most of the disapproval in her eyes had disappeared. After a moment of contemplation, he said, "It's just as well. Didn't you say that you're going to do the mathematics and science papers in the afternoon? I don't have much to do, so I can help him with his lessons." The disapproval in Shi Yao's eyes was quickly replaced by gratitude. Thank you, Lin Jiej. Lin Jiej's anxious heart finally calmed down. It's only right. Thus, throughout the entire meal, Lin Jiej no longer dared to casually look for a conversation topic. By the time Lin Jiej was done with Gu Nanxiang's mathematics and science papers, it was already dusk. After staying in Shi Yao's house for an entire day, Lin Jiej finally decided to leave in satisfaction. Chapter 330. Shi Yao sent Lin Jiej down the stairs. Before getting into the car, Lin Jiej glanced at the glowing green t-shirt he was wearing through the rearview mirror, and he couldn't help but frown. Last night, he thought that he had been cuckolded, so he decided to wear a green t-shirt. But today, he realized that the person who had cuckolded him was actually his brother-in-law. After a moment of contemplation, Lin Jiej asked Shi Yao before getting into the car, "Is my t-shirt a little weird?" "It's not that. I've never seen you wear such an exaggerated color before, so I was a little surprised at first," Shi Yao replied honestly. In truth, with Lin Jiej's looks and figure, he could probably wear any kind of color. Putting aside her initial surprise, this green t-shirt was actually quite nice. After a moment of silence, Shi Yao added, "Besides, I do like the color green. For example, my favorite watermelon and honeydew in summer are also green." Hearing those words, Lin Jiej felt reassured. Me too. I think the color green isn't too bad either." The road back home was a little congested. Lin Jiej left Shi Yao's house at 5, and by the time he reached his own home, it was already 7:30. A second after his car drove into the courtyard, the servants in the house immediately burst into an uproar. "Young master is back. Hurry up and hide madam's emerald earrings. Also, move old master's plants to the greenhouse on the top floor. Put young Miss Flowers in her bedroom for now. Also, cover mister's painting with a cloth. Don't forget to hide the apple well. Also, your clothes are green, remember to change them." After the car came to a stop, Lin Jiej flicked his keys and entered the house. While he was changing his shoes, he noticed that the famous painting hanging on the wall was actually covered by a cloth. Frowning, he turned to a servant and said, "What are you doing? Why would a painting be covered by a cloth? Don't you know how expensive that painting is? It's the work of a master, and hanging it in the house is just for show. If you cover it for me, what's the point of me buying it?" Back at Shi Yao's house, Lin Jiej had eaten an apple that Shi Yao had washed personally while he was explaining the questions to Gu Nanxiang. As he walked upstairs, he said, "Oh, wash some apples for me and send them up. Also, the clothes I'm wearing, come and get them later. Help me wash them. I'll be taking them back to school tomorrow." After confirming that he had nothing else to say, Lin Jiej walked into his bedroom and closed the door, leaving the servants staring at one another in bewilderment. "Didn't you hate green and apples before you left?" She picked on all the greenery in the house and even threatened to never let him see apples again. Why did his taste change after leaving for less than 24 hours? The young master's heart was like a needle in the sea. That night, Lin Jiej looked for Shuyao to play with her as usual. The person who logged into her game tonight was not Gu Nanwal, but herself. Around 10:30, Shuyao announced that she was calling it a day. Perplexed, Lin Jiej sent a private message to Shuyao via WeChat. "Isn't it still early? There's no class tomorrow. Why aren't you playing?" Soon, Shuyao replied to his WeChat, "I'm heading to the hospital to visit a grandfather who treats me very well tomorrow morning." "Ah. Is she going to visit my grandfather? So, as long as I wake up early tomorrow morning and head to the hospital, I'll be able to see Soft Bun just like today." Chapter 331. However, in order to ensure the authenticity of the information, Lin Jiej still asked Shuyao a question out of curiosity. "Is your grandfather hospitalized?" "Yao loves ice cream. He's not my real grandfather, but he treats me like one." As expected, it's time to visit my grandfather. Hiding the identity of less than 111,111 in front of Soft Bun sure is beneficial. Not only could he use two identities to treat her well and improve her impression of him by twofold, he could also act as a spy. For example, the information he had sent tonight would allow him to have an unexpected encounter with her at the hospital tomorrow. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej continued typing. "Oh. Are you going to wake up very early tomorrow?" "Yao loves ice cream, on. I'll be heading out at 7. If she were to take the subway to the hospital, she should be able to reach there around 8:30. Having more or less understood the situation, Lin Jiej didn't dawdle anymore. "All right then. Have an early rest. Good night." Not too long later, Lin Jiej received Shuyao's reply. It was a "good night" emoticon. Lin Jiej didn't respond to Shuyao's message. Instead, he put down his phone and gazed at the night sky outside the window. As the fragrance of flowers drifted in from the garden downstairs, he began fantasizing about how he would meet Shuyao tomorrow. As he thought about it, the corners of his lips curled up into a very subtle smile. However, that smile didn't last for too long before he sighed softly. "What should I do? It hasn't even been half an hour since I chatted with Soft Bun, and I'm already thinking of her again." Early the next morning, Lin Jiej woke up. Perhaps it was because he rarely woke up so early, but when he went downstairs, the maids were staring at him in astonishment. On the other hand, Lin Jiej calmly walked into the kitchen, and under the maids' astonished gazes, he said leisurely, "For breakfast, I want glutinous rice balls, mango pudding, steamed eggs with milk, tofu pancakes, puffs, and 8 treasures porridge, meat buns, and wontons." Lin Jiej listed out everything he knew that Shuyao had eaten in his house. After a moment of thought, he added, "and yogurt and cherry apples. Remember to pack them up for me. I'll be bringing them to the hospital. Make enough for 4 people." After confirming that there was nothing more to add, Lin Jiej prepared to leave the dining hall. But just as he was about to leave, he suddenly felt a little uneasy, so he halted his footsteps and asked the maid, "Did you take down everything I said earlier?" The servant nodded. However, Lin Jiej didn't believe it. "Forget it, I think that you might have missed it. Why don't you turn on the recording function and record it down?" The servant wanted to say that she had recorded everything down, but when she saw the slight frown on Lin Jiej's face, she decided that it was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. She turned on her phone and recorded everything that Lin Jiej had said. The maid thought that this was the end of the recording, but who could have thought that Lin Jiej would actually ask her to play the recording once more? After the recording was over, she finally escorted the living bodhisattva out of the dining room. While the servants were preparing breakfast, Lin Jiej took the time to take a bath and do his hair. He even took out the skincare products that he had never used before and applied them to his face. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with his face and hairstyle, Lin Jiej walked into the changing room and began picking out his clothes. Chapter 332. Coincidentally, by the time Lin Jiej arrived at the living room, the servants had already packed up breakfast. Lin Jiej was usually a dazzling sight, but today, he had specially groomed himself, and his radiance was so dazzling that it could blind anyone's eyes. As such, the servants kept sneaking glances at him while they were delivering the breakfast to the car. As Lin Jiej approached the car, the lock opened automatically. While the two servants were placing the breakfast into the car trunk, they were secretly conversing with one another. "Young master, you look strangely handsome today." Strangely handsome. Standing in front of the car, Lin Jiej's sharp ears overheard the servant's words, and a slight frown appeared on his forehead. What kind of description was that? Indeed. It reminds me of a saying, "A woman dresses up for the man who pleases her." Lin Jiej's frown deepened. A woman dresses up for the man who pleases her. Is this saying appropriate for me? It's not like I'm a woman. After the two servants were done placing the breakfast in the car, Lin Jiej opened the car door, got in, and started the engine. As he was driving out of the hospital, Lin Jiej thought to himself. That saying should be, "A woman dresses up for Yao Yao, Pui, a man dresses up for Yao Yao." A man can represent all men in the world. Isn't he making a cuckold out of himself? It should be, Lin Jiej pondered for a moment, and a phrase surfaced in his mind, "I dress up for Yao Yao." It was a weekend morning, so there were very few cars on the way. It only took Lin Jiej around 10 minutes to reach the hospital. He didn't rush upstairs. Instead, he parked the car at the entrance of the hospital building and waited in it. Around 15 minutes later, he finally saw Shi Yao holding a strawberry-covered parasol at the entrance of the hospital building. After Shi Yao entered the hospital building, Lin Jiej pushed open the car door and got out. He first looked at himself in the rearview mirror to ensure that his looks were up to standard before heading to the car trunk to grab the breakfast bags and headed for the hospital building. When he arrived at his grandfather's ward, Lin Jiej wasn't in a hurry to enter. Instead, he looked at himself in the mirror by the side before pushing the door open. He knew that Shi Yao was inside, but he feigned ignorance. As soon as the door opened, he called out nonchalantly, "Grandfather." Just as Lin Jiej had hoped, everyone in the ward immediately turned their heads to look at the door. Upon seeing who it was, Grandpa Lin, Shi Yao, and Auntie Sun were astonished. Lin Jiej didn't give anyone a chance to speak at all. As he walked into the ward, he spoke up once more, "Breakfast is here." As he said those words, he glanced at Auntie Sun calmly and said, "Auntie Sun, if you want me to deliver breakfast to you some other day, say it earlier." Nodding in realization, Shi Yao reined in the astonishment on her face and greeted Lin Jiej, "Morning." Hearing those words, Grandpa Lin's expression also returned to normal. With a smile on his face, he said, "Since Yao Yao is here so early, I'm sure that you haven't had breakfast yet. Let's eat together." Only Auntie Sun stared at Lin Jiej with a dumbfounded look on her face. Who could tell her when and where she had texted little young master to get him to deliver breakfast? Chapter 333. Auntie Sun thought that she was hallucinating. She quickly blinked her eyes, only to find that even more question marks were floating in front of her. Paying no heed to Auntie Sun's crumbling expression, Lin Jiej asked, Auntie Sun, what's wrong with you? Breakfast has already been delivered, so why aren't you helping grandfather prepare it?" As he spoke, Lin Jiej began placing the dishes on the table. The sight of food immediately drew Shi Yao's attention. "Grandpa Lin, who treated Yao as his precious darling, only cared about calling out to her, Yao Yao, have some glutinous rice balls, Yao Yao, have some buns, Yao Yao, have some 8 treasures porridge. Andy Sun's presence was simply too inconspicuous, so no one noticed the peculiarity in her expression. As such, no one asked her whether the matter was true or not. She could only follow Lin Jia's instructions and place the breakfast on the table. When all the dishes were served, old Master Lin frowned. "Ha! Auntie Sun, why are they all sweet breakfasts? Don't you have my favorite tofu pudding and youtiao?" Before Auntie Sun could say a word, Lin Jie, who was stirring the dumplings in his thermos bottle, suddenly spoke up. Auntie Sun must be getting on in her years, and her memory isn't as good as before. She really didn't mention anything about tofu pudding or youtiao in her message last night." At this point, Lin Jie didn't forget to turn to Auntie Sun and ask, "Did I remember wrongly?" Auntie Sun. Auntie Sun felt aggrieved, but she didn't say it out loud. "Yes, yes, yes. Old Master, my memory is really getting worse and worse." Grandpa Lin didn't seem to mind it at all. He shot Auntie Sun an understanding look before continuing to chat with Yao. Yao shot Auntie Sun a comforting smile before lowering her head to munch on her buns. As she munched on them, she nodded her head fervently in response to Grandpa Lin's concerned words. "It's fine, Auntie Sunday. You don't have to feel pressured. It's just a mistake, no one will mind it." Lin Jie consoled Auntie Sun out of goodwill before taking away the thermos flask filled with wontons and replacing it with the one he had stirred at a similar temperature. Even though Auntie Sun had her own difficulties, the atmosphere in the ward during breakfast was still very harmonious and warm. Even though Grandpa Lin didn't like sweet food, Yao's soft voice of, "Grandpa, you're eating too little. Have some more, and this bun is really delicious." Have another 1 inch were enough for Grandpa Lin to swallow quite a bit of food. Standing by the side, Lin Jie didn't say much, but listening to Yao's words of advice to her grandfather, even though it had nothing to do with him, he still felt like he had eaten quite a bit of food. However, this kind of atmosphere didn't last long before it was broken by someone. At the end of breakfast, someone knocked on the ward door. Auntie Sun put down her chopsticks and went to open the door. It was still early, so Grandpa Lin Jie, and Yao thought that it was a doctor who had come to check on them, so they didn't pay too much attention to it. It was only when Auntie Sun called out, "Madame Liang," that the 3 of them turned their gazes toward the entrance of the ward. Grandpa Lin Jie, and Yao recognized the newcomers. It was Liang Juxi's mother, as well as Liang Mumu's aunt, Liang Huiling. Meeting Grandpa Lin Jie, and Yao's gazes, Liang Huiling immediately greeted Grandpa Lin with a smile, "Uncle Lin." As soon as she said those words, she walked into the ward wearing a silk qipao and a pair of high heels. Chapter 334. Everyone was familiar with the person following them, but to Yao, it wasn't just a simple acquaintance. In fact, she was very familiar with the other party. This was because she hadn't seen Liang Mumu ever since that unpleasant incident in the hotel on Mother's Day. In the instant that Liang Mumu and Yao's eyes met one another, the expressions on their faces froze for a moment. But in just an instant, Liang Mumu had already turned to Grandpa Lin and greeted him sweetly, "Greetings, Grandpa Lin." Grandpa Lin had been hospitalized, so naturally, no one had told him about the unpleasant events that had taken place in the past. Thus, the ignorant Grandpa Lin replied amiably upon hearing Liang Mumu's words, "It's been some time since I last saw Mumu. Speaking of Mumu, I'm the one who hasn't seen you for some time. I went overseas a while ago, and I just returned yesterday. Mumu told me that you were hospitalized, so I rushed over to pay you a visit." As Liang Huiling spoke, she passed the tonics she had brought over to Auntie Sun and asked, "Uncle Lin, how are you doing? Are you feeling better?" I'm feeling a little better. Grandpa Lin shot Auntie Sun a glance, gesturing for her to clear the table. After which, he continued chatting politely with Liang Huiling. Liang Mumu stood obediently by Liang Huiling's side. While the two elders were conversing with one another, she acted as if nothing had happened at all. She greeted both Lin Jiej and Shi Yao with a tone that made it seem as if they were still close friends. Brother Jia, it has been a long time since we last met. Yao Yao, I've missed you so much. Lin Jiej had never been too familiar with Liang Mumu's greetings before, so after what had happened back then, Lin Jiej chose to ignore Liang Mumu's greetings. On the other hand, Shi Yao couldn't be as willful as Lin Jiej. After all, the Lin clan and Liang clan had always been on good terms, and she was an outsider at the end of the day. There was no guarantee that the two clans would be unhappy over this matter. If she were to embarrass Liang Mumu right before Grandpa Lin and Liang Huiling, there was a good chance that Grandpa Lin would be displeased with her. So, after hearing Liang Mumu's words, Shi Yao's eyes immediately curved into a smile and she said, Mumu, I miss you too. Seated by the side, Lin Jiej's mind seemed to be as clear as a mirror. He knew that Soft Bun had no choice but to get close to Liang Mumu, but even if Soft Bun had no choice, he had plenty of ways to deal with her. Thus, after Liang Mumu heard Shi Yao's words and uttered the word Yao Yao, Lin Jiej spoke up, Yao Yao, when I was explaining the questions to your cousin yesterday, I noticed that he wasn't very solid. I'll tell you about it so that you can take note of it and report it to him. After saying those words, Lin Jiej didn't give Liang Mumu a chance to speak. He instructed Shi Yao to use her phone to jot down his words as he started talking about the important topics for mathematics and science. Having heard every single word of Lin Jiej's words, Liang Mumu's face grew a little agitated. Yao Yao. Brother Jia is calling Shi Yao Yao now. Explaining the questions to your cousin yesterday. When did Brother Jia get so close to Yao Yao to the point where he would even help her cousin with his homework? As Lin Jiej spoke, he discreetly shot a glance at Liang Mumu, and only after noticing the slightly embarrassed look on her face did he retract his gaze in satisfaction. You must be joking. Do you think that anyone can mistreat my people so easily? Chapter 335. You must be joking. Do you think that anyone can mistreat my woman so easily? Do you think that everyone is willing to put on an act with you? Even if Soft Bun is willing, I'm not. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej intentionally leaned in a little closer to Shi Yao and continued calling her Yao Yao. With a gentle voice, he got to the point. Didn't Brother Jia hate to get too close to women? But the distance between him and Shi Yao was so close that his face was almost touching her hair. Also, didn't he always use that cold and indifferent tone when talking to others? But his current voice was so gentle that it didn't sound like the him she knew at all. Liang Mumu stared at Lin Jiej and Shi Yao, and her fingers curled up slightly as she tugged on her sleeves. Liang Huiling was chatting with Grandpa Lin, Shi Yao was chatting with Lin Jiej, and Auntie Sun was washing the thermos flasks for breakfast. For a moment, Liang Mumu felt a little redundant. She didn't want to interrupt the conversation between elders, so when Lin Jiej didn't say anything, she refused to give up and took the initiative to talk to Shi Yao and Lin Jiej. But Lin Jiej never gave Shi Yao a chance to speak. This made Liang Mumu even more awkward. Even though she was still standing elegantly beside Liang Huiling, her legs were trembling in anger. Roughly half an hour later, Grandpa Lin and Liang Huiling were finally done with their small talk. Only then did Lin Jiej stop talking to Shi Yao. Grandpa Lin asked, "Where's Auntie Sun? Did she go out? I wanted her to wash some fruits for us to eat." "Grandfather, I'll go wash them." Shi Yao stood up and picked some fruits. Just as she was about to head to the washroom, Liang Mumu suddenly spoke up once more. Her tone was just like before, carrying a hint of coquettishness. Yao Yao, I want to eat some cantaloupe. Can you cut one for me as well? Lin Jiej frowned. Unlike before, Grandpa Lin and Liang Huiling didn't say a word, but the moment Liang Mumu spoke, both of them heard her words. There was no way Shi Yao could ignore Liang Mumu in front of her elders. Thus, after hearing the latter's words, she could only smile and reply, "All right, I got it." After saying those words, Shi Yao returned to the fruit basket and picked up a honeydew melon. After Shi Yao entered the washroom, Lin Jiej sat on the chair for a moment. Glancing over, he saw that there was still a cantaloupe left in the fruit basket. A thought flashed through his mind, and he said, "I'll go and help you." After which, he stood up, walked over to the fruit basket, took the last remaining cantaloupe, and walked into the washroom. After washing the fruits, Shi Yao brought them out, found a fruit knife, and began cutting them. The plates in the ward were small, so Shi Yao had to split them into two. One plate was cantaloupes, the other was apples, oranges and grapes. Putting down the fruit knife, Shi Yao was just about to take the two plates of fruits over when Lin Jiej swiftly picked up the plate of cantaloupe before her. Walking up to Grandpa Lin and Liang Huiling, Shi Yao placed her plate of fruits on the table. Then, she opened up a path for Lin Jiej. With a nonchalant expression, Lin Jiej passed the fruit platter to the table with a single hand. It was hard to tell whether it was due to his carelessness or something else, but the platter ended up falling to the ground, shattering into smithereens. Even the cantaloupe chunks scattered all over the floor, stained with dust, making it inedible. Chapter 336. Right after Lin Jiej said those words, Auntie Sun pushed the door open and entered the room. After which, he turned to her and said, "Auntie Sun, clean up the room and cut a honeydew melon." Auntie Sun, yes, young master. Auntie Sun had always been a swift worker, so it didn't take long for her to clean up the mess on the floor. Following Lin Jiej's instructions, she went to fetch some cantaloupes, but other than watermelons, apples, and bananas, there were no other fruits in the fruit basket. Thus, she said, "There's no more cantaloupes in the ward. If you want some, I'll go out and buy some, Lin Jiej, it's not me who wants to eat it." Auntie Sun was taken aback. Grandpa Lin spoke up, "It's Moo Moo who wants to eat it. Auntie Sun, go and buy one for her." Liang Huiling hurriedly stopped him. "No, it's not necessary. It's not like we can't eat at home. Do we have to eat here?" Since her aunt had already said so, Liang Mumu quickly chimed in as well, "Yes, yes. Grandpa Lin, there's no need for that. I was just saying it out of curiosity, so let's just forget about it." Hearing Liang Huiling and Liang Mumu's words, Grandpa Lin didn't pursue the matter any further. "All right then. Have some other fruits." Liang Mumu replied with a sweet smile, "Thank you, Grandpa Lin." Lin Jiej shot a glance at Liang Mumu's slightly uncomfortable smile, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he pretended to be Shi Yao, lowered his head slightly, and leaned in close to Shi Yao. "Yao Yao, what did you say?" With an apple in her mouth, Shi Yao shook her head, indicating that she didn't say anything at all. On the other hand, Lin Jiej continued, "You said that you want to drink a little." When old Master Lin heard this, he immediately replied, "Yao Yao wants to drink a little. In that case, Auntie Sun, hurry up and go buy it." Shi Yao hurriedly swallowed the apple in her mouth and said, "It's fine, it's fine. I have to line up for Dian Dian, so I won't drink it. Auntie Sun is the one queuing up, not you. If you want to drink anything, just tell Auntie Sunday. She knows how to drive." As Grandpa Lin spoke, he turned to Lin Jiej and asked, "You drove here, right? Give the car keys to Auntie Sun." "Shi Yao, there's really no need. I really don't want to drink it, however, Grandpa Lin, Lin Jiej, and Auntie Sun acted as if they hadn't heard her words at all. Those who handed over the keys handed over the keys, those who took the keys took over the keys, and those who took the keys took over the keys. As she didn't say anything about the flavors, Lin Jiej decided for her. After Auntie Sun left the ward, Lin Jiej shot another glance at Liang Mumu. This time, not only did the uneasy smile on the girl's face disappear, even the corners of her lips tightened. Ha! You want soft bun to help you cut the cantaloupe? Then you have to be able to eat it. Also, if you politely say that you don't want to eat honeydew anymore, Grandpa won't buy it for you. But soft bun is different from you. As long as Grandpa thinks that she wants to eat it, regardless of whether she really wants to eat it or not, even if she doesn't know how to eat it, Grandpa will still buy it for her. So, facing such an ending, were they surprised? Are you surprised? Should I slap his face or not? To think that she could bully soft bun right under his nose, she must be daydreaming, indulging in fantasy. Oblivious to Lin Jiej's thoughts, Grandpa Lin asked, Yao Yao, what's a little bit? Sure Yao, it's milk tea. Grandpa Lin, you like to drink it? Sure Yao nodded. It's just that they have to line up frequently. That's not a problem. Grandpa Lin replied nonchalantly. I'll get someone from my company to join little bit later on and have them serve you exclusively. Chapter 337. Hearing Grandpa Lin's words, Lin Jiej silently gave his grandfather a thumbs up in his heart and awarded him the title of Godly Assist of the Year. After which, he glanced at Liang Mumu's face once more. Compared to the displeased look on her face from before, the awful look on her face was much more obvious. It wasn't that everyone in the room was against her. Who asked her to cause trouble for soft bun time and time again? It's everyone's first time getting married, so why are you the only one who's causing so much trouble for me? Not too long after Auntie Sun left, Grandpa Lin's attending physician came over to check on him. After checking on Grandpa Lin's body, the attending physician habitually explained Grandpa Lin's current condition to Lin Jiej. There was a slight improvement, but the situation still didn't look too optimistic. After hearing those words, Lin Jiej asked, Is it fine if Grandpa is discharged for a short period of time? The attending physician glanced at Grandpa Lin, and after receiving the latter's affirmative gaze, he replied, A day or two is fine, but I don't recommend him to leave the hospital for too long. Lin Jiej nodded. It's Grandpa's birthday next month, so we'll have to hold a birthday banquet. If Grandpa still hasn't recovered by then, I'll have to trouble the physician to make 2 more trips to our residence. The attending physician, no problem, that's fine. Listening to the conversation between Lin Jiej and the attending physician, Liang Mumu's eyebrows shot up in astonishment. Grandpa Lin's birthday next month. Then, with such thoughts in mind, she discreetly shot a glance at Shi Yao before lowering her eyes to conceal the scheming glint that flashed across her eyes. After the attending physician left, Liang Mumu immediately spoke up, Brother Jia mentioned Grandpa Lin's birthday earlier, and I suddenly remembered that Yao Yao had already prepared a birthday present for you a month ago. Shi Yao frowned. She did remember Grandpa Lin's birthday, but she had been worrying about what kind of present she should prepare for him recently. So, how could she possibly have prepared a birthday present for him a month ago? Grandpa Lin, I'm sure that you'll like that birthday present. Yao Yao bought an inkstone for you, and I was right beside her when she bought it. It's really special. At this point, Liang Mumu suddenly covered her mouth, as if she had accidentally spilled the beans. Then, she continued apologetically. I accidentally spilled the beans about what the present is. However, I won't tell you what it looks like so that you won't be surprised by it. Inkstone. It's really my favorite. But even if Yao Yao gives me something else, I will still like it. As he spoke, Grandpa Lin turned to Shi Yao and said, "Yao Yao, you actually started preparing my birthday present a month ago. I didn't dote on you for nothing. Inkstone." Even the better inkstones should be expensive. Liang Mumu knew that she didn't have the money, so was she trying to set a difficult problem for her? However, Grandpa Lin had already said such words to her, not to mention that Liang Mumu had beaten her to it. It seemed like she could only admit defeat. Shi Yao contemplated for a moment before replying to Grandpa Lin, "It's Grandpa's birthday. I'll definitely be very concerned about it." Knowing that this was the only reply Shi Yao could give, Liang Mumu's lips curled up into a cold sneer upon hearing Shi Yao's reply. Shi Yao didn't have much money, so even if she were to buy an inkstone, it was impossible for her to get a good one. On the other hand, all Liang Mumu needed to do was to find out what the inkstone Shi Yao bought looked like, and she would be able to match her real inkstone against her fake one during Grandpa Lin's birthday banquet. Chapter 338. The Lin clan was one of the few prestigious clans in Beijing. There were bound to be many influential people attending Grandpa Lin's birthday banquet. If someone were to learn that Shi Yao's inkstone was a fake in front of so many people, just the thought of it made Liang Mumu's blood boil. It would surely be an exciting scene, wouldn't it? Shi Yao would surely become the laughingstock of the entire Beijing circle. Lin Jie's mother, Jiang Wangui, had always been a proud person, and she despised useless people the most. If she were to succeed this time, Jiang Wangui's impression of Shi Yao would surely plummet. So what if Grandpa Lin liked her? So what if Lin Jie liked her? Jiang Wangui was the strongest person in the Lin clan, not to mention, Grandpa Lin was already an old man, and he didn't have many years left to live. All she had to do was let Jiang Wangui know that Shi Yao was a useless person. Jiang Wangui might not do anything to Shi Yao in consideration of Grandpa Lin, but once Grandpa Lin passed away, with such thoughts in mind, the cold sneer on Liang Mumu's lips grew even more pronounced. She had failed on Mother's Day. She wouldn't allow herself to fail again at this birthday banquet. She had liked Lin Jie ever since she was young, and she had liked him for many years. She had always thought that with her cousin Liang Juxi's relationship with Lin Jie, she would stand a chance. Who could have thought that Shi Yao would suddenly appear out of nowhere? She looked down on Shi Yao from the bottom of her heart, but she still endured it and befriended her so that she could find out about the situation between Shi Yao and Lin Jie. When she learned that there was no interaction between them, she was overjoyed on the inside, even though she was criticizing Lin Jie along with Shi Yao on the surface. Even when they met in the SKP elevator a long time ago, it was something she had arranged in advance. She had learned from Liang Juxi that they were going to have a meal at SKP, so she had informed one of the girls in their group beforehand. Back in the elevator, Lin Jie hadn't recognized her at all, and she had been overjoyed. She had intentionally asked Lin Jie why he was ignoring Shi Yao so as to embarrass her. Over the years, she had resorted to such little tricks many times. For example, when Lin Jie went out for a meal with a certain lady, Lin Jie would send a certain lady home. But in truth, that wasn't the truth at all. She was intentionally telling Shi Yao about it, and she didn't forget to mention how good that lady's background was so that Shi Yao would feel inferior to Lin Jie and feel that she wasn't worthy of Lin Jie, thus widening the gap between the two of them. So, when Shi Yao told her that she was going to cancel her engagement with Lin Jie, she had already expected this. This was all part of her plan. She had waited for 6 years, and this day had finally arrived. No one knew that when she parted with Shi Yao that day, she cried in agitation in the car. After she calmed her emotions down, the first thing she did was run home to complain to Grandpa Lin about it. She wanted to create a misunderstanding between them so that Lin Jie would hate Shi Yao even more. She was determined to win, and she was brimming with confidence. Yet, after some time had passed, Lin Jiej actually brought her along to participate in Liang Juxi's game. She had tampered with the game that day to ensure that Lin Jiej wouldn't kiss Shi Yao. Yet, she had been slapped in the face time and time again. It was then that she realized that the one who hadn't changed was Shi Yao, and the one who had changed was Lin Jiej. She had spent so much time and effort to convince Shi Yao to cancel her engagement with Lin Jiej, but who could have thought that Lin Jiej would actually care about Shi Yao? Chapter 339. As Liang Mumu went through the past in her heart, she couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. No matter what, she had to succeed at Grandpa Lin's birthday banquet. After the attending physician left, Liang Huiling and Liang Mumu stayed in the ward for a little while longer before leaving. Thus, only Grandpa Lin, Lin Jiej, and Shi Yao were left in the ward. Without Liang Mumu's interference, Lin Jiej reverted back to his usual cold and silent self, leaning against the windowsill and fiddling with his phone. Grandpa Lin and Shi Yao were chatting quietly, and the atmosphere in the ward was relatively peaceful, making it comfortable to stay here. Lin Jiej wasn't paying attention to what the two of them were talking about, but as he tapped on his phone, he raised his head to look at the scene by the bed, and an indiscernible hint of gentleness slowly crept into his cold eyes. By the time Auntie's son returned from buying some food, it was already 11 in the morning. Grandpa Lin, who had been feigning weakness for 4 to 5 hours, felt that if he were to continue like this, he would have to feign illness even if he wasn't sick. So, as soon as he saw Auntie's son, he immediately urged Lin Jiej and Shi Yao to leave with glowing eyes. "Jiej, Yao Yao, I'm a little tired. Auntie's son is back, so I don't need you here anymore. You should go back to your own matters." As he spoke, Grandpa Lin feigned exhaustion and coughed twice before gesturing for Auntie's son to help him lie down. In order to make his illness seem more real, Grandpa Lin closed his eyes and coughed a few times forcefully. Understanding Grandpa Lin's intentions, Auntie's son covered him with a blanket before whispering to Lin Jiej and Shi Yao to leave. "The old master has fallen asleep, and there's no point in you staying here any longer. You should head back." Lin Jiej and Shi Yao didn't insist. One instructed Auntie's son to take good care of her grandfather, and the other obediently bade farewell before Auntie's son escorted them out of the ward. Auntie's son wasn't in a hurry to return to the ward. Instead, she stood by the door until Lin Jiej and Shi Yao entered the elevator before returning to the ward. The moment she closed the door to the ward, old Master Lin, who was lying on the bed as if he was terminally ill, suddenly threw off his blanket, got off the bed, and began to practice Tai Chi. "It's fortunate that they don't come every day. If they came every day, I would have to pretend to be sick. Auntie's son, there's still one of the ice cream I asked you to buy yesterday, right? Help me get it. Also, where's my chess set? Take it out. I'll bring it to the ward next door and ask old son to play a few rounds." Following Grandpa Lin's instructions, Auntie's son pulled aside the bedsheets and pulled out a mini fridge to grab some ice cream. Then, she took out a chessboard. "Lin Jiej, Lin Jiej, Lin Jiej." Following behind him, Shi Yao was stunned for 2 seconds before she realized that he was talking to her. So, she hurriedly nodded her head and replied, "Unite," she said, "T, sheet, T, S teat help but T, shirt teat teat, sure took lint." Lin Jiej shot a glance at Shi Yao, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he pressed on the key in his hand, and upon seeing the car lights coming on, he took the lead and walked toward the car. "T, ding. Sure T." Chapter 340. On the way to the campus, Lin Jiej received a call. By the time he hung up the call, he was already almost at the entrance of G University. Lin Jiej turned to look at Shi Yao, intending to ask her if she was going back to the dormitory or somewhere else, but before he could say anything, he caught sight of the phone Xiao was looking at. She's browsing Taobao. The first thought that popped up in Lin Jiej's mind was to buy food, but when he saw the search term she was looking for, he couldn't help but frown. Inkstone. Soft Bun was actually looking at an inkstone. Could it be that Soft Bun didn't buy any inkstone for grandfather's birthday present? Then, according to Liang Mumu, Soft Bun had prepared a birthday present for grandfather a month ago. Was that pure nonsense? Liang Mumu and Soft Bun's relationship had clearly broken down, so what was Liang Mumu's motive for doing this? Lin Jiej's frown deepened. Roughly 30 seconds later, he had a rough idea of what was going on. If Liang Mumu were to compare herself to Soft Bun, there was no doubt that Soft Bun had a weakness, and to Liang Mumu, Soft Bun's greatest weakness was her lack of money. Since Liang Mumu told Soft Bun that she wanted to buy an inkstone right in front of her grandfather, the poor Soft Bun could only buy an ordinary one. Putting aside what Liang Mumu was up to, this ordinary inkstone could very well be her weapon, or to be more precise, it could only be described as ordinary, so Liang Mumu's words in the ward were actually to dig a hole for Soft Bun. A sharp glint flashed across Lin Jiej's eyes. "We're here." Xiao was the first to notice that the car had arrived at the female dormitory. She exclaimed in surprise before turning to Lin Jiej. She was just about to say, "We're here," when she noticed that there was something amiss with the young man's complexion, and the words at the tip of her tongue abruptly died in her throat. Upon hearing her voice, Lin Jiej quickly stepped on the brakes. The car came to a stop, and just as Xiao was about to alight, she took another glance at Lin Jiej, and seeing that his complexion was still a little pale, she pondered for a moment before asking, "Did something happen?" Lin Jiej frowned. A few seconds later, he realized that it might be due to his pale complexion, so he quickly shook his head and replied, "Nothing." After a pause, he added, "I'm thinking about the project." "Oh, I see." Xiao didn't doubt his words at all. She smiled and said, "Goodbye then. Thank you for sending me off." The corners of Lin Jiej's lips curled up slightly as he replied with a soft mm. After sending Xiao off into the female dormitory, he picked up his phone and made a call. "I have a favor to ask of you. Can you help me look for a particularly high-end and expensive inkstone?" Money isn't a problem. What's important is that it's classy enough. Thanks." After hanging up the call, Lin Jiej's lips curled up into a cold sneer. Isn't Liang Mumu a little too naive? Did she think that she could bury Soft Bun just like that? He wanted to let her see who was the one who dug the pit and buried the other. After sending Xiao back to school, Lin Jiej drove back home. Since he didn't have any classes on Monday morning, he didn't go back to school. Instead, he stayed at home for another night and only asked his driver to send him back to school at 10:00 on Monday morning. He didn't let the driver drive the car to the dormitory. Instead, he stopped the car at the school gate. Chapter 341. Lu Benlai and Xie Shangzhou greeted him one after another, "Boss." Lin Jiej stared at the two of them in surprise for a moment before asking doubtfully, "You're going out?" "Xie Shangzhou, that's right. I'm going shopping with little Lai Lai." "Lu Benlai, that's right, boss. I've been through a lot of hardships, and I've finally found an opportunity to get close to my wife." "Xie Shangzhou, she's my future wife, and an uncertain future wife at that." "Lu Benlai, is there a difference between a future wife and an actual wife?" "Xie Shangzhou, what's the difference?" "You ignorant and incompetent grandson." "Lu Benlai, the heck, you unfilial grandson." Lin Jiej was already used to the two of them bickering over the slightest matter. His eyebrows shot up, and without saying a word, he walked past them and headed back to his seat. But a second after he sat down, Xie Shangzhou suddenly spoke up, "Boss, there's something you might not know yet. Yesterday, little Lai Lai and I were eating cold noodles at the back of the school when we bumped into a girl that little Lai Lai had taken a liking to. Little Lai Lai took out a love letter that he had been writing for a month and passed it over to the girl. Guess what happened, boss?" Lu Benlai, grandson, shut up. Ignoring Lu Benlai's protest, Xie Shangzhou continued gleefully, "The girl didn't even spare a glance at little Lai Lai. She said that she didn't want it, and little Lai Lai shamelessly insisted on giving it to her. Lu Benlai, how am I shamelessly? I'm just chasing after her relentlessly." In the end, the girl grew impatient with little Lai Lai, so she accepted the love letter. Little Lai Lai was overjoyed, but the next second, the girl threw the love letter into the trash can. Little Lai Lai, who was overjoyed for less than 2 seconds, asked the girl, "Why didn't you take a look at it?" The girl replied coldly, "Since you've given me the love letter, it's mine. Do I need your opinion on how I want to deal with it?" After that, the girl put down her chopsticks, left the petrified little Lai Lai behind, paid the bill, and left. After finishing his story, Xie Shangzhou began laughing mercilessly at Lu Benlai. "Lu Benlai, what the heck are you laughing for? Is it that funny?" Xie Shangzhou replied, "Yeah, I want to laugh when I see my grandson being humiliated. You can't hit me, can you?" "I can't help it, I'm just that strong, ha 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 ha." "Lu Benlai, it's over. My grandson has gone mad." "Boss, I haven't finished yet. Do you know why little Lai Lai wants to go shopping today? That's because he heard that the girl he's interested in is attending the French elective class tomorrow, and he's intending to attend it as well. He said that he'll be able to improve their relationship as quickly as possible. She doesn't even want to read his love letters, but he's intending to attend a class with her to improve their relationship." Ha 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 ha. Xie Shangzhou suddenly stopped laughing as he mercilessly stabbed Lu Benlai in the back. "Little Lai Lai, pardon me for being blunt, but have you returned the ant flowers from last month? Now you want to go shopping and buy clothes just to meet your goddess. It's the ant flower. It belongs to the ant flower. I'm not an ant. Why should I return it?" After Lu Benlai replied confidently, he turned to Lin Jiej and asked, "Boss, do you want to go shopping with us?" Without hesitation, Lin Jiej replied, "I'm not going." At the same time, Xie Shangzhou said, "Boss, Junior is going to French class too." Chapter 342. Thus, the three of them left room 501 side by side. And so, the three of them skipped their afternoon classes and shopped around the mall until 6 in the evening before returning to school with their shopping bags. And so, the next afternoon, Lin Jiej and Lu Benlai took a bath and changed their clothes, surrounding Xie Shangzhou and asking, "What do you think of this? What about this?" After going back and forth for around an hour, the three of them headed to the open French elective class in school. Shi Yao and Leng Yuan were the first ones who wanted to attend the French elective class. Later on, He Tian and Jiang Yut saw that 2 of their roommates were going, so they decided to tag along as well. Shi Yao and the others arrived rather late, so by the time they reached the classroom, the seats at the front were already filled. Even if there were empty seats, it was only 2 to 1. Thus, the 4 of them chose a row at the back and sat down in a row. Soon, the bell rang. The French elective was a native of France. After walking into the classroom, before he could even speak, the door to the classroom was pushed open, and 3 male students walked in. Shi Yao and the others recognized the 3 of them. The first to enter was Xie Shangzhou. Everyone in the classroom was extremely calm. As the elective class hadn't started yet, they were either swiping their phones or whispering to one another. The classroom was in complete chaos. The second to enter was Liu Benlai. He was dressed in a peach-pink t-shirt. The color of his t-shirt was simply too eye-catching, and quite a few people turned to look at him. The commotion in the classroom quieted down a little. The third person to enter was Lin Jiej. As usual, he was dressed in white, but today, he was wearing a white shirt that accentuated his tall and slender figure to perfection. Furthermore, he had applied hair wax to his hair, so it didn't hang down casually like it usually did. Instead, it was slanted, revealing his plump forehead. This made him look no different from a male lead in a Korean drama that would shock the hearts of the audience. Lin Jiej was an influential figure in the school, and there was a popular saying in G University, if 9 out of 10 students know the name of the principal, then 10 students would definitely know who Lin Jiej is. Therefore, the moment he stepped into the classroom, he attracted everyone's attention. At the same time, the entire classroom immediately quieted down. However, this silence didn't last for more than 10 seconds before Yao heard whispers coming from all directions. Wow, Lin Jiej, he's so handsome. Yeah, this is the first time I've seen him in person. I didn't expect him to come to my French class. If I'm not wrong, the next French class will be packed. Putting aside the bystanders, even Yao was dazzled by Lin Jiej's beauty for a moment before falling into a daze. On the other hand, Lin Jiej seemed to be oblivious to the gazes and discussions around him as he followed Liu Benlai to the back of the classroom expressionlessly. The gazes of the students in the room followed Lin Jiej's back. In truth, Yao was also a little curious as to where Lin Jiej and the others would be sitting, so her gaze also circled around Lin Jiej. However, as Lin Jiej drew closer and closer to her, Yao couldn't help but feel nervous. It wasn't until Lin Jiej reached her row that Yao couldn't help but grab her brush tightly. He wouldn't be going to sit next to her, right? Chapter 343. It was only when Lin Jiej walked up to her row and slowed down that Yao couldn't help but grab her pen tightly. It can't be that, he's going to sit beside me, right? As this thought flashed across Yao's mind, she began to feel even more nervous. She subconsciously raised her eyes to sneak a glance at Lin Jiej. He really did stop at the aisle beside her. Yao gulped down a mouthful of saliva nervously, and even her breathing became a little cautious. Just as she thought that Lin Jiej would sit beside her in the next second, and everyone's gazes would fall on her, Lin Jiej's figure suddenly moved. Then, accompanied by a few slight noises, Yao felt the table behind her shake slightly. Lin Jiej had taken the seat right behind her. So, I was just thinking too highly of myself. Yao heaved a sigh of relief as she loosened her grip on the pen in her hand. After Lin Jiej found a seat, Liu Benlai and Xie Shangzhou also took their seats. Yao and Leng Wan sat in the same row, but Jiang Yu and He Tian were between them. Without a doubt, Liu Benlai chose the seat behind Leng Wan. As a result, Xie Shangzhou, who was sandwiched between Jiang Yu and He Tian, couldn't help but glance at Jiang Yu and He Tian. In the end, Xie Shangzhou decided to put down the 2 seats between Lin Jiej and Liu Benlai, filling up half of the seats. Compared to Boss and Liu Benlai, who could only look at the back of one person's head, he was much better as a third wheel. He could look at 2 people at once. After Lin Jiej, Liu Benlai, and Xie Shangzhou were seated, the French teacher announced that the class would begin. There were still quite a few people who turned their heads to look at Lin Jiej. It was only when the French teacher announced that the class would begin for the 3rd time did the classroom finally fall silent, and everyone's gazes finally returned to the podium. In the first place, Lin Jiej, Liu Benlai, and Xie Shangzhou weren't here to listen to the lecture. So, after the French teacher began the lecture, Xie Shangzhou took out his phone, put on his earphones, and began playing games. Lu Benlai supported his chin with his hand as he stared intently at Lang Nuan's back. On the other hand, Lin Jiej took out an advanced mathematics textbook that he had borrowed from the school library and began reading it. While he was reading, Lin Jiej would occasionally listen to the French teacher's lecture, paying attention to the latter's words from time to time. This lesson was really child's play. If he listened to it too much, would it lower his IQ? With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej calculated in his mind for a moment, and after solving a complicated problem, he flipped through the pages of the book. If it wasn't for Soft Bun, I wouldn't have come at all. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej subconsciously lifted his gaze to look at Shi Yao's back. The clothes she was wearing today were a little loose, which made her slender back look even thinner. She sat upright in front of the table, listening to the lecture with her back straight. He could vaguely see a small part of her arm, which was whiter than snow. Lin Jiej stared at Shi Yao's slender arms for a moment before shifting his gaze back to the book. However, barely after taking a second look, a thought suddenly struck him, and he raised his head once more to look at Shi Yao's back. So, it wasn't an illusion. Her clothes really were a little translucent. He could even see the color of her underwear. It was a light pink. Luckily, he was the one sitting behind her. Lowering his head, Lin Jiej continued reading his book. Chapter 344. Beauty really is the bane of men, Lin Jiej lampooned in his mind as he closed his book and leaned lazily against the back of his chair, staring straight ahead. He was tall, so he was able to see past Shi Yao's head. In truth, he was just casually looking around, but a man and woman in front of him suddenly caught his attention. The man and woman seemed to be a couple, and they were secretly holding hands under the table. The man had a pen in his hand, and he seemed to be taking notes. On the other hand, the woman's left hand was on the table, fiddling with her phone. There's actually a class like this. Lin Jiej stared at the couple curiously for a moment before he turned his gaze back to Shi Yao. Even though what he had just done was inappropriate, at the very least, it was disrespectful to the teacher and the classroom. However, if Soft Bun were to be with him, he would be willing to accompany her to class and do those inappropriate things together, putting aside taking notes. Even if he had to copy a textbook, he would do it for Soft Bun. It had been 3 years since he entered university, and the one sitting beside him had always been those two fools. Just the thought of it made his heart ache. While Lin Jiej was intensely disdainful of Lu Benlai and Xia Shangzhou, Yi Tian, who was sitting beside Shi Yao, leaned over and whispered to her. Yao, Nuan said that she's here to learn French so that she'll have better job opportunities after she graduates from university. What about you? Shi Yao tilted her head and leaned over to He Tiantian's side. For French red wine and delicacies. This answer is really Shi Yao. But if Soft Bun is learning French just for that, there's really no need for her to do so. I'm a good French teacher, so I'll accompany her. I'll be responsible for the language and money, and all she needs to do is eat. While Lin Jiej was deep in thought, He Tian spoke up once more with a love-struck look on her face. Yao, don't you think that our French teacher is really handsome? Do you think that Soft Bun is as love-struck as you? Lin Jiej thought disdainfully in his mind, but a second later, Shi Yao replied, yes. He's so cool when he's talking about French delicacies. You can even be praised for that. Lin Jiej was speechless for a moment before he leaned over to Xia Shangzhou and began speaking in French. Of course. Xia Shangzhou stared at Lin Jiej with a dumbfounded look on his face. Boss, what did you say? Ignoring Xia Shangzhou, Lin Jiej continued speaking in French. Shi Yao and He Tian, who were seated in front, heard Lin Jiej's voice, and they quickly turned their gazes over curiously. Noticing Shi Yao's gaze on him, Lin Jiej began to speak French in a frenzy. Xia Shangzhou was even more dumbfounded. Boss, I really don't understand. Who cares if you understand? Lin Jiej spoke up, and he spoke in French. Xie Shangzhou, boss, can you please speak Chinese? The whole world is learning the Chinese language. Confucius's words are becoming more and more international. The second half of the sentence was a lyric. Halfway through, Xie Shangzhou even started humming while swaying left and right. Then, he lost control of his voice and disturbed the French teacher who was standing on the podium and lecturing non-stop. Following which, the French teacher noticed Shi Yao, who still hadn't turned her head around, and Lin Jiej, who was speaking to Xie Shangzhou with his head tilted to the side. Then, the French teacher pointed to Shi Yao's row and said, "The second last girl in this row, stand up." Chapter 345. For a moment, Shi Yao couldn't figure out who the French teacher was referring to. It was only when he Tian nudged her arm that she realized that the teacher was referring to her. Shi Yao hurriedly stood up, but before she turned to look at the French teacher, she didn't forget to glare at Xie Shangzhou. Meeting Shi Yao's gaze, the French teacher asked in French, "Student, what's your name?" Shi Yao understood what he meant, Shi Yao. The French teacher continued speaking in French, "Which faculty are you from? Which class are you from?" Out of habit, Shi Yao still replied in Mandarin, "Year 1, English faculty." "French teacher, please answer my question in French." Shi Yao quickly repeated what she had just said in French. The French teacher nodded and continued to speak in French for a long time. Shi Yao was dumbfounded. She had no idea what the French teacher was talking about, nor did she understand what he was asking her to do. The French teacher waited for a moment, but seeing that Shi Yao wasn't saying a word, he spoke in French once more. This time, Shi Yao was able to understand what he was saying. He was asking her to translate what he had just said. But she couldn't understand a single word, so how was she supposed to translate it? Due to Shi Yao's silence, more and more people in the classroom turned to look at her. This French teacher was known to be strict in the academy. If a student whose name was called out by him couldn't answer a question, he would change the question. If a student still couldn't answer a question after 3 tries, he would choose to punish the student to stand. Could it be that Shi Yao, who had never been punished in her entire life, was going to be punished? Being stared at by so many people made Shi Yao feel a little uncomfortable. Her face grew redder and redder, and thinking about how she was likely to be punished, her resentment towards Xie Shangzhou grew deeper and deeper. Soft bun. You don't know how to do this. Lin Jiej looked at Shi Yao's reddened ears, and without any hesitation, he reached his hand into his pocket. Just as he reached for his phone, the French teacher spoke once more. The French teacher repeated what he had just said before turning to Shi Yao and saying, "Think about how you should translate it. If you can't do it, I'll give you a new translation later." Following which, the French teacher spoke once more, "This young lady's name is Shi Yao, right? All right then. The male student behind Shi Yao, stand up." When the culprit, Xie Shangzhou, heard the French teacher calling him Lin Jiej, he couldn't help but burst into laughter. But before he could finish laughing, Lin Jiej shot him a cold glare, causing his body to tremble in fear, and he immediately fell silent. Only then did Lin Jiej slowly stand up with one hand in his pocket and the other supporting himself on the table. He was much taller than Shi Yao. As he stood there, Shi Yao felt as if there was something looming over her. The questions that the French teacher asked Lin Jiej were the same as the ones he had asked Shi Yao earlier. Lin Jiej. 3rd year, Mathematics Department. Lin Jiej replied nonchalantly to the French teacher as he took out his phone from his pocket. Lowering his gaze, he tapped into his messages and searched for Shi Yao's name. The question that the French teacher asked Lin Jiej was the same as Shi Yao's. It was still a translation, just that the content was different. While listening, Lin Jiej's fingers flew across his phone as he typed furiously. After the French teacher stopped speaking, Lin Jiej paused for 3 seconds before he began translating the French teacher's question. His fingers did not stop moving. He spoke very slowly. Chapter 346. Just like that, multitasking, Lin Jiej finished writing his message and sent it over to Shi Yao. In order to give Shi Yao sufficient time to read the message, he slowed down the speed at which he translated the French teacher's question. In fact, he even paused for a moment, as if he was deep in thought. When he felt that it was about time for Shi Yao to finish reading the message, he briefly ended the question that he had been answering. Not bad, just that it's a little complicated. There are some parts that can be simplified. After commenting on Lin Jiej's question, the French teacher wasn't in a hurry to have him sit down. Instead, he turned to Shi Yao and asked, Shi Yao, what about you? Can you return to my question now? Shi Yao nodded her head lightly before using her own words to explain the message that Lin Jiej had just sent her. Her temporary memory wasn't too bad, but it wasn't that good either. There were a few minor mistakes in the middle of the message. However, the French teacher didn't make things difficult for her. After correcting her mistake, he had her sit down. Heaving a sigh of relief, Shi Yao returned to her seat. When she opened her hand that was holding onto her phone earlier, she realized that it was covered in a layer of sweat. How nervous! This was the first time in her life that she had cheated. After Shi Yao was seated, the French teacher turned to Lin Jiej once more and spoke in French. Lin Jiej's reply was also in French. The two of them exchanged words for 5 to 6 times before the French teacher finally had Lin Jiej sit down. This brief interlude passed quickly, and the French teacher continued with his lecture. When the French teacher's attention finally left, he Tian leaned over to Shi Yao and whispered softly, Yao Yao, you're really incredible. The French teacher was rambling on, and it sounded like a heavenly book, but you were actually able to translate it. Even though it took you a little too long, it's still incredible. My Yao Yao is just like the female lead in novels with cheats. You're good at everything. Hearing those words, Shi Yao couldn't help but sweat profusely. How in the world was she the female lead in novels with cheats? The one behind her was the real male lead in the novel. He could actually answer the teacher's question and solve her question at the same time. His ability to do 2 things at once was truly unparalleled. Afraid that the French teacher would call for her to stand up for the second time, Shi Yao didn't respond to He Tiantian's words. Instead, she discreetly picked up her phone and sent 2 messages to Lin Jiej. Thank you. That was close. I thought I was going to be punished. Very soon, she received Lin Jiej's reply. It's nothing much, it's not worth mentioning. Shi Yao replied with a smiling emoji. Then she thought of the conversation between the French teacher and her after she sat down. Because it was all in French, she didn't understand. She couldn't help but ask, what did you and the teacher talk about in French just now? Lin Jiej, you want to know? Shi Yao, Lin Jiej, not telling you. Shi Yao. How can this person be so despicable? All of a sudden, Shi Yao couldn't help but wonder if the person she was thanking earlier was actually Lin Jiej. Shi Yao's phone vibrated once more. It was a message from Lin Jiej. If you really want to know, I'll tell you about it in the future. A second after she finished reading the message, the bell signaling the end of the class rang. Just as Shi Yao was thinking about how she should reply to Lin Jiej suddenly stood up. Placing his hands on the table, he leaned his body forward and leaned in close to Shi Yao's head. With a slightly perplexed tone, he said, this future won't take too long. Chapter 347. Just as Shi Yao was thinking about how she should reply to Lin Jie suddenly stood up. Placing his hands on the table, he leaned his body forward and leaned in close to Shi Yao's head. With a slightly perplexed tone, he said, "This future won't take too long." Hearing Lin Jie's voice, Shi Yao's fingers trembled, and she nearly dropped her phone. "It won't be too long in the future. What does he mean by that?" Shi Yao turned her head around in bewilderment. Lin Jie's face, which was so beautiful that it could cause one's heart to palpitate, appeared before her eyes. This time, it wasn't just Shi Yao's hands that were trembling, her heart was trembling as well. The golden rays of the setting sun shone on his face through the window, accentuating the outline of his brows and eyes. He stared at her impassively, his gaze as nonchalant as ever. Even though he didn't look too different from usual, for some reason, Shi Yao felt that Lin Jie's gaze was exceptionally alluring. It was as if there was a deeper meaning hidden in his eyes that she couldn't fathom. Shi Yao stared at Lin Jie in a daze, unable to react. She felt that the atmosphere between the two of them was a little strange, but she couldn't figure out what was strange about it. Oblivious to the situation, Jiang Yu packed up her things and suddenly shouted, "Yao Yao, let's go to the canteen." Shi Yao still didn't respond. Lin Jie continued to stare into her eyes for a while longer before he finally moved his lips and spoke with a calm voice, "There's one more thing." As his voice drifted into Shi Yao's ears, she slowly regained her senses. She didn't understand what he was trying to say, so she replied with a very soft, Hearing that, Lin Jie glanced at the clothes Shi Yao was wearing before saying, "The clothes you're wearing are really ugly." Shi Yao blinked her eyes, unable to wrap her head around the situation. "Lin Jie, in my family, such clothes can only be used as a cleaning cloth." Shi Yao blinked her eyes once more as she finally caught on to the situation. What did it have to do with him whether her clothes were ugly or not? Even if she was ugly, he didn't have to look at her at all. Why did he have to add that it could only be used as a cleaning cloth? Shi Yao suddenly felt that the elegant and refined young man she had seen earlier was just a facade. To think that she had felt that the atmosphere between them was strange. Had her brain short-circuited at that moment? In order to make Shi Yao throw away the clothes she was wearing as soon as she returned, Lin Jie pondered for 2 seconds before adding, "Not to mention, it's the kind of cloth used to clean the toilet." It was getting more and more outrageous. Shi Yao glared at Lin Jie with puffed-up cheeks and retorted, "If you think it's ugly, you can choose not to look at it. Besides, do you think everyone is like you, throwing away their clothes and buying new ones? I don't have money and I can't afford new clothes. Even the mice that come to my house leave with tears in their eyes. So, if you don't like it, you can either stop looking or buy me clothes." After spitting out a long string of words, Shi Yao packed up the textbooks on the table, leaving Lin Jie, who was still in a daze from her rage, to stand up and leave. While Lin Jie was interacting with Shi Yao, Lu Benlai wasn't idling around either. Chapter 348. Leng Wan turned around to look at Lu Benlai, but she didn't pay him any heed. Instead, she turned around and continued packing her things. As if an unkillable cockroach, Lu Benlai poked Leng Wan's back once more and said, "Classmate, I really have a stomachache. You can't just leave me in the lurch. Besides, it's just a packet of tissues, surely you won't really." But before Lu Benlai could finish his words, a packet of tissues was tossed onto his table, followed by a cold remark. It was from Leng Wan, who didn't even turn her head around. "Please shut up." Lu Benlai picked up the tissue and smiled, "Thank you, classmate." Leng Wan ignored him. Lu Benlai didn't seem to mind that he was being ignored at all. He continued asking, "Student, how much does a packet of tissue cost?" "I'll pay you." The only response he got was an indifferent stare at the back of his head. Lu Benlai, classmate, I don't like owing others anything. You're making me feel uneasy, and if I'm uneasy, I won't be able to sleep well, eat well, and study well. If this continues, I'll really let down my parents. Ling Wan, 50 cents. Lu Benlai rummaged through his pockets and said, I didn't bring my wallet with me. Can I transfer it to you via WeChat? Noticing Ling Wan's silence, Lu Benlai spoke up once more. If WeChat doesn't work, what about Alipay? Student, if you really can't do it, bank transfer is also fine. You see which one is more convenient for you. Student, can you hurry up? My stomach hurts, I can't stand it. Just like before Lu Benlai could finish his words, Ling Wan suddenly reacted. She turned around and passed her phone to him. It was the Alipay page. Lu Benlai hurriedly whipped out his phone and scanned the QR code. Student, I'll transfer the money to you right now. As his voice fell, he had already entered the amount and password, and the transfer was successful. Classmate, I've transferred 52 cents to you. Of the 2 cents, one is my gratitude, and the other is interest. Before Lu Benlai could finish his words, Ling Wan had already picked up the things on the table and left. Her footsteps were swift, and it didn't take long for her to catch up to Shi Yao. Following which, Tian and Jiang Yu also left the classroom. After which, Lu Benlai retracted his hand from his stomach and sat up straight. With a gleeful smile, he waved the tissue in his hand and said, See this? This is the token of love that my wife gave me. Xie Shangzhou, who had witnessed everything that had just transpired, said disdainfully, TSK, you were the one who shamelessly tricked me. Lu Benlai, so what if I scammed him? You're so awesome that you scammed me. Besides, at least I have something that my wife gave me. Do you guys have it? It took Lin Jiej a second for him to recover from his daze, but the next moment, he heard Lu Benlai's infuriating words. A slight frown appeared on his forehead as he whipped out his wallet from his pocket and took out a slip of paper. I do. This was the note that Shi Yao had given him back when he was invigilating the Marxism examination. If Lu Benlai's packet of tissues could be considered as a token of love, then his note was the token of love amongst tokens of love. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej added, furthermore, Yao Yao was the one who gave it to me on her own accord. Chapter 349. Are Boss and Little Lai Lai trying to show off that they have someone they like? Xie Shangzhou hugged his arms tightly and fell silent for a moment before replying confidently, I have Miss Five Fingers who has been by my side since I was young, understands me, and never forsakes me. TSK. Lu Benlai scoffed. As if anyone doesn't have one. As he spoke, Lu Benlai turned to Lin Jiej, intending to pull him into an alliance. Boss, tell me, do you have one? Do we all have one? Lin Jiej shot a glance at Lu Benlai before replying calmly, I'm different from you. I'm not as fickle as you. I only have Yao Yao. This. What does this have to do with being fickle? Lu Benlai, who had been looked down upon instead of pulling him into an alliance, was at a loss for words. Seeing Lu Benlai's embarrassment, Xie Shangzhou gloated, other than Miss Five Fingers, I also have pride. Lu Benlai didn't understand. What the heck? Xie Shangzhou shot Lu Benlai a fooled look and replied, I'm a single dog, and I'm incredibly proud of it. Not only am I proud, I'm proud. After all, there's a saying that goes, lean on a mountain and it will topple over, boss, I'm proud of myself. Unable to out-talk Xie Shangzhou, Lu Benlai quietly changed the topic, boss, what are we eating tonight? Lin Jiej casually picked up his textbook, and without thinking, he blurted out the words, large canteen, before heading out of the classroom. On the way to the canteen, Lu Benlai excitedly looked at the packet of tissues that he had shamelessly tricked from Lin Wan, admiring it fondly. Noticing his reaction, Lin Jiej couldn't help but curse in his heart, childish. Then, he carefully opened the slip of paper Shi Yao had given him and read through it word by word. After which, he carefully folded it up and hid it back in his wallet. There were quite a few people in the large canteen. Lin Jiej circled around the crowd twice, but he wasn't able to find Shi Yao. After placing his order, he took a seat, but he wasn't in a hurry to pick up his chopsticks. Instead, he took another look at the surrounding tables. While they were eating, Lu Benlai was so excited that he couldn't stop his mouth from gorging on his food. "Boss, old Xia, please don't think that the trick I used in the classroom was too tacky. Let me tell you, my tricks are not as simple as you think. It looks like I'm looking for my wife for a token of love, but I'm actually trying to get my wife's bank account. Look, I've successfully got my wife's Alipay account. I'll transfer 520 yuan to her account in a few days." Speaking up to this point, Lu Benlai suddenly felt that it was a little boring to chat alone, so he tried to pull Xie Shangzhou and Lin Jiej into the conversation. "What would you do if 520 renminbi suddenly appeared in your Alipay accounts?" Xie Shangzhou chewed on a chicken claw and replied, "Spend it." "Lu Benlai, you immoral person." After which, Lu Benlai turned his gaze to Lin Jiej and asked, "Boss, what about you?" Lin Jiej scanned his surroundings and replied, "I don't know." Lu Benlai, "Aw. What did he mean by don't know? Are you conflicted between embezzling it or returning it?" "That's not it." Lin Jiej replied absent-mindedly. He craned his neck to look into the distance for a moment before his gaze returned to Lu Benlai's face. "I have too much money in my account. I wouldn't notice anything less than 5 digits. Chapter 350. Lu Benlai. He had nothing better to do, so why the hell would he interact with them? Wouldn't it be better for him to perform a monologue alone? Xie Shangzhou. Room 501 had been reduced from a single aristocrat and 2 single dogs to a single dog, and now, he was the only single dog left. It was already hard enough for him, but why did his boss's casual reply to little Lilai's question still stab his heart? Faced with Lu Benlai and Xia Shangzhou's silence, Lin Jiej didn't realize how stinging his words were at all. He stared at the two of them for a moment before speaking up once more. "If the 3 of us were to fall out of love one day, I'm sure that I wouldn't be as sad as the 2 of you." Xie Shangzhou, why? Could it be that boss doesn't love her deeply enough? Lu Benlai, or, boss, could it be that you're in a fake relationship? Lin Jiej lowered his gaze as he picked up some food and replied half-heartedly, "That's because I still have money even without love, and the 2 of you don't have money either." Xie Shangzhou, you're still beating around the bush in the end? Then why did I respond to boss's words earlier? Lu Benlai, he knew that boss wouldn't say anything nice, but why was his memory so bad that he kept trying to chat with boss? Afraid that Lin Jiej would continue speaking, Lu Benlai quickly changed the topic back to what he was talking about earlier. "Regardless of whether one of you spent the money or the other didn't know about it, I believe that if 520 renminbi suddenly appeared in my wife's Alipay account, she would surely return it to you. I'll blacklist her so that she won't be able to transfer the money to me. She'll definitely come looking for me, and I'll just have to find someone to leave a contact number with her so that I can contact her later on. That way, I'll be able to get her phone number." Xie Shangzhou, I don't know where your confidence comes from, but if Leng Wan spends it all like I did, or if Leng Wan is an invisible rich second-generation heir, like boss, who doesn't notice the change in the amount of money, what would you do? Lu Benlai, that's easy. I'll report her to the Public Security Bureau, and the police will surely have a way to contact her. I'll be able to get my wife's phone number then. In conclusion, no matter whether you return the 520 yuan to me or not, I already have my wife's phone number from the moment she handed me the Alipay page. While listening to Liu Benlai and Xie Shangzhou's conversation, Lin Jiej's thoughts drifted away. The food in front of him was barely touched, and his head kept turning in all directions of the dining room. He looked around for a long time, but he was unable to find Shuyao. Instead, his attention was drawn to a couple sitting at the neighboring table. The couple only ordered one meal. Judging from the bowl, it should be rice noodles or noodles. The girl was playing with her phone the whole time, while the boy put the noodles into the spoon, blew on it twice, and then fed it to the girl's mouth. When the girl opened her mouth to eat, the soup would occasionally drip onto her lips. The boy would take out a tissue and carefully wipe the girl's mouth. This boy was so attentive. Lin Jiej thought disdainfully before retracting his gaze. 2 seconds later, he turned his gaze back to the couple. Chapter 351. The boy happened to pick up a quail egg. Probably because the quail egg was round, the boy didn't manage to catch it. Just as it was about to reach the girl's mouth, the quail egg slipped from his chopsticks and rolled onto the girl's clothes before falling to the ground. The girl's clothes were stained with oil. She unhappily put her phone on the table and pulled a long face. The boy immediately put down his chopsticks, picked up a tissue, and wiped the girl's clothes while smiling obsequiously. Due to the distance between them, Lin Jiej wasn't able to hear what the young man was saying. However, he could see that the young man had gone on for a very long time before the smile on the young woman's face finally lit up. Following which, the young man picked up his chopsticks and picked up another quail egg before carefully placing it into the young woman's mouth. After the young woman finished the quail egg, the young man picked up another one. Seeing this sight, Lin Jiej couldn't help but make a tisk sound as he turned his gaze away once more. This boy. Not only was he attentive, he was also a lackey. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej turned his gaze back to the couple. The girl was probably full. When the boy passed her a slice of ham, she stared at the phone screen and gently shook her head. The boy, who hadn't eaten a single bite of the noodles, immediately put down his chopsticks when he saw that she wasn't eating anymore. He picked up a napkin and wiped her mouth clean before picking up his chopsticks again to fill his stomach. The boy had only taken 2 bites when the girl who was looking at her phone suddenly moved her lips. She must have called the boy's name. The boy looked up and the girl leaned over and kissed the boy on the cheek. It was probably because in the cafeteria, this couple was not as restrained as the couple in French class. After being kissed by the girl, the boy immediately broke into a smile. He randomly picked up a tissue to wipe his mouth, then turned his head and pecked the girl's lips. This boy. Not only was he attentive and bootlicking, he was also very perverted. Lin Jiej averted his gaze out of pure indecency. This time, he didn't look for Shuyao anymore. Instead, he turned his gaze to the window. As he stared at the cafeteria, a thought suddenly surfaced in his mind. If he were to come to the cafeteria with Shuyao, if he were to feed Soft Bun and wipe her mouth, and Soft Bun were to kiss him of her own accord, he would gladly feed her a lifetime's worth of rice. But if Soft Bun were to kiss him, would he kiss her back just like that guy? Was there still a need to say it? Of course it would. Even if he had to do it in front of a huge crowd, it didn't matter. It was perfectly legal for him to kiss Soft Bun, so why couldn't he? Not only would he kiss her, but he would also kiss her deeply. Seeing that Lin Jiej had already put down his chopsticks, Liu Benlai asked, "Boss, are we leaving?" Chapter 352. Lin Jiej really wanted to head to the library. He was currently in charge of a project, and there were some documents that he needed to browse through in the library. Before heading to the library, he made a trip back to his dormitory room to retrieve his laptop. He arrived at the library rather early, so most of the seats were still empty. With great familiarity, Lin Jiej found the book he wanted to borrow and began looking for a seat. Ever since he came to the library, he had always liked to sit in the most inconspicuous corner. It was the same this time. Grabbing his book, he headed to the corner. But halfway there, he suddenly halted his footsteps as his gaze fell upon the very center of the library. Back then, Qin Iran had called a few hoodlums to stop Soft Bun at the entrance of the school. That night, he had bumped into them, and Soft Bun had said that she was going to the library to do some questions. He had followed her over, but due to the fact that he had arrived too late, most of the seats were already occupied. Thus, he and Soft Bun could only sit at the centermost seat, which was usually the least popular among students. Lin Jiej stared at the two seats that he and Shuyao had sat on for 2 seconds before walking over to put down his laptop and book. Lin Jiej didn't stay in his daze for too long. After switching on his laptop, he put in his noise-canceling earphones and began browsing through the documents. More and more people gathered in the library. Even when Lin Jiej was sitting at an inconspicuous seat, he was still able to attract the attention of many. Now that he was sitting at a place where everyone could see him, many of the students in the library stopped studying and started secretly taking pictures of him with their phones. Oblivious to this, Lin Jiej continued reading the documents and memorizing the main points. Time passed quietly as he studied. When he was finally done reading through everything he wanted, he heaved a sigh of relief. Rubbing his neck, which was a little stiff from spending too much time on the computer, he raised his head. He closed his eyes and rested for a moment. When the fatigue in his eyes finally subsided, he finally sat up straight. He was intending to check if he had forgotten any important points before heading back to his dormitory room. However, as soon as his gaze fell onto the computer screen, he saw two people sitting right in front of him. Judging from how close they were to each other, they were a couple. What a weird day. Why did he keep bumping into couples everywhere he went? Or was it usually like this, just that he didn't notice it at all? With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiej's gaze swiftly swept across the library. Then, he realized that there were quite a few couples in the library. So, there were quite a lot of people in G University who had a significant other. While Lin Jiej was digesting this revelation, the boy of the couple sitting in front of him leaned over to the girl's ear and whispered something to her. The boy's voice was really soft. If one didn't pay special attention to it, one wouldn't be disturbed. "Baby, do you know what kind of person I am?" The girl shook her head. "I don't know." The boy replied, "I'm a tacky person. Pfft, it seems like this bro has some self-awareness." With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej turned his gaze back to the computer screen, intending to look at the important points in his notes. The boy sitting in front of him continued. "See the mountain as the mountain, see the sea as the sea. Heh, this brother is really humorous. Could it be that there is someone else who sees the mountains as the sea, and the sea as the mountains?" Lin Jiej shook his head. "But when I saw you, the sea of clouds began to surge, and the tides began to surge, ha." To Lin Jiej, only money would be able to make her sea of clouds roil and the tides surge. To Soft Bun, only food would be able to make her sea of clouds roil and the tides surge. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.